the code share agreement between Kenyan Airways and South African Airways, which established a direct flight between Nairobi and major South African cities, has enhanced accessibility and convenience for travelers, thereby stimulating tourism between these two countries. In addition to this, several new routes have been launched here in South Africa since the last Africa's Travel Indaba.
In other news, investigating officer in the Senzo Meyiwa case, Sergeant Batho Mukhola, has been asked about a draft application for a warrant of arrest for Kelly Khumalo. Mukhola, who has been under cross-examination at the High Court in Pretoria, where 5 men are appearing for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. The draft application is said to be in the docket before court. However, when Mukhola responded to Defence Counsel Zandile Mshololo, she could not give reasons as to why the warrant has not been authorized and issued.
Regarding the warrant of arrest that was issued against Ms. Kelly Khumalo, are you aware of that?
Of the draft?
Yes.
The application for the warrant?
Yes.
Yes, I am aware, my lord, because I was briefed by Brigadier Keninda.
Are you aware also as to why that application for that warrant of arrest has not been authorized against Ms. Kelly Khumalo?
My lord, I am not aware.
Moving to the Western Cape, police have arrested 2 suspected robbers near Mitchell's Plain on the Cape Flats for being found in possession of stolen vehicle and unlicensed firearms. The police spokesperson FC Van Wyk says the vehicle was reported hijacked earlier this year. He says the suspects are expected to appear in court today.
A closer inspection on the vehicle was made and the members found 2 firearms, 1 revolver and a silver 9mm pistol. Preliminary investigations revealed that the vehicle was reported as hijacked in Delft in March 2024. The vehicle was also linked to a business robbery that transpired at a clothing retail store in Peru. 2 men aged 35 and 40 were arrested and detained at Lentegeur Police on charges of possession of unlicensed firearms, possession of a hijacked motor vehicle and business robbery.
Lastly, the U.S. has highlighted what it says are significant human rights problems in Bangladesh. In its annual country report for 2023, the State Department said there had been no improvement since the previous year, with continuing reports of unlawful and arbitrary killings and forced disappearances and torture by the government in Dhaka. It says prison conditions in Bangladesh can be life-threatening and there are serious problems with the independence of the judiciary. Recapping the top story this hour, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Science and Innovation, Blade Nzimande, says SETAs have made a significant contribution in promoting employment. Headlines at 3:30 for SFM News. I'm Dino Mutaung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Mamelodi Sundowns shift their focus to PSL tonight. Djokovic pulls out of the Madrid Open and Thailand keen to host F1 race on streets of Bangkok. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues, no more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-dun-da-dun-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-dun-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, just now as I got to SABC or the SFM studios, was driving in the Auckland Park area, and in front of me was this learner driver. And now I'm not going to tell you how he or she struggled, not at all. But they were in front of me, and of course I kept my distance, and they had the L plates on, and then they proceeded and they moved on. So that's not the story. The story was, I was thinking about it as, you know what, all of us have been through learning how to drive, and when you press accelerator, brakes and clutch and use the gears for the first time, it seems like you will never get it right. It seems impossible, isn't it? But then over a period of time, with your driving schools, you get better and better. And then ultimately you're competent enough to go on the road, and then competent enough to get a license, even if you failed once or twice or three times. Ultimately, you then can drive a car. And for me, the big takeout as I was watching them was we go for our driver's license because we think it's an absolute life skill. So no matter how much we fail and how difficult it is, we go out and tackle it. So here's the thought. Outside of your vocation, whatever it is you're studying for or your career, there could well be 10 other life skills, maybe 5, okay, that in reality you need to know how to do it. I mean, swimming obviously would be another one that comes to mind, but there could be others, right? And the majority of us stay away because we're too scared, we don't know, maybe too expensive, all those factors. But if we embarked on this national campaign of embracing the 5 or 10 most important life skills that we must have, right? What would happen then? Would we not be in a position that over a short period of time, the nation becomes far more skilled at multiple levels than they've ever been? So think about it. The driver's license is one thing, but what are the 5 or 6 or 10 other life skills that are not your jobs that you may wish to embrace as a matter of course for every one of us? And if you get that right, well, you get it right, you are skilled, and, very importantly, so would the nation, because we'd be far bigger and more skilled as a nation. Something for you to think about. Well, there you are. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, so how about you commenting about that? I mean, have you been in that position where you've struggled with your driver's license and no matter what, still gone ahead and done what you did because you understood it was paramount in terms of you living your life? And then, what else have you applied in terms of other life skills that seemed impossible, but you've done it? I certainly want to know, and you can call into 086 000 2032. WhatsApp in text or voice note form 0614 104 107. If you're tweeting on the X platform, well, tweet out to SFM Radio. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. And then do tag me as well, Ashraf Garda. And I can tell you now, we have a show to talk about here that will cover a range of issues with the economy of South Africa and our neighbours, very much part of our neighbour Zimbabwe, that is, very much a part of this conversation, right? Well, we'll chat later on to Tessa Dooms about the state of the nation or government, the national state and the state of the economy and how they link to each other, if not, okay? So there we are, that's just one of them. Let's, however, start with talking about Zimbabwe. Now, I understand that today you had a situation that whether they were informal traders or street hawkers, there's a sense that they were not using, people in Zimbabwe, this new ZiG currency. They were not wanting to use it, right? So I understand. As a result of that, there's been pictures circulating on social media showing the police officers beating up vendors for not accepting the new currency. Remember, this new currency would replace the old Zimbabwe dollars or the US dollars or the South African rand. So I need to know more about it. I'm sure you want to know more about it too. Let's find out more then with Lennon Ndebele, who's the head of News 24's Africa Desk. Lennon, good chatting to you and thanks for joining us for the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you.
Good. I'm trying to get a picture of Zimbabwe's national pulse, which must be racing, and there's some sense of people being furious about what's happened today. So give us the backstory to that.
Well, people must know that first things first, the ZIG is not yet there in physical form. It's at the moment electronic money. So you swipe or you use something called EcoCash. It's something like an e-wallet of sorts, but it's electronic money basically. So vendors are not taking electronic money because they prefer the US dollar, the hard currency, the US dollar, which has more value than this phantom money, so to speak, of which will have notes maybe next week. So,
Okay.
but they, yeah.
Are you saying is that the fundamental reason? So are they not taking it because it's too difficult to receive it electronically or risky? Or are they not taking it because that ZIG currency has already been devalued since the time it hit the streets a few weeks back?
Well, people prefer, informal traders prefer hard cash. Hard cash as in money that you can hold with your hands, because they also get their wares from somewhere in hard cash, which is mostly in foreign currency. Because remember, the ZIG as it is only trades locally. It doesn't trade outside Zimbabwe. They claim that this money is almost equal to the pula in rand, which is about maybe 24% valuable more than the rand if you are to compare with the US dollar. But you don't have it in physical form. So what happens is people now buy US dollars using the ZIG from the street, the black market foreign currency dealers.
Okay, so with that having said, so clearly these informal traders, these street vendors are refusing to take the money. Now, the second part of that is the police allegedly beating them up. Can we verify that that's what happened?
Well, what I'm aware of is that the police have been rounding up foreign currency dealers. Some have been found with pure point-of-sale machines. They are basically buying. People are buying US dollars from these foreign currency dealers. So they say it's illegal. But now the unfortunate thing with this ZIG is that you can't buy an air ticket to Ethiopia or to the UK. Only today, a local airline, FastJet, started taking this money, but no one else is taking it. And by the way, you can't buy basics like fuel with ZIG. You have to buy fuel in rand or in American dollars. So for someone who earns a ZIG, they just go to the black market to procure those US dollars to fuel their cars. So if you have to say they can't go to the black market, how do you expect them to fuel their cars when you don't find US dollars in the banks? You can't walk into a bank and say, I've got 10 ZIG, I want American dollars or rand or pula or whatever. You can't, because the money is not there. So the money is in circulation in the black market, and you get it at a premium. For example, they are pegging the ZIG to one US dollar is 13 ZIG. That's the official rate in the banking sector. But now, if you want to buy that money, you go to the black market and they'll say one ZIG is 1 US dollar is 19 ZIG or 20. So already it has lost value in the black market.
Yeah. Okay, got that.
So
look, from a government point of view, clearly once they've established the ZIG, it would be in government's interest and they would want more people to use it. But you already said the hard notes haven't yet even been printed, so that will happen in a week or two, right? So with that in mind, why then would the police resort to beating people up? And who have they beaten up? Have they beaten up the money exchanges, or are they beating up the street vendors?
Well, I don't know if anyone who has been beaten up. All I know is people being arrested. For example, there are about 62 that were arrested a few days ago. One of them was supposed to get married the next day, So they were arrested for being in possession of debit cards that are not in their names.
Okay, we've certainly seen pictures circulating on social media, and they're there, and then we'll probably maybe get my team to post some of them as well on Twitter now, just with the hashtag the National Pulse of, in fact, police officers beating up vendors for not accepting the new currency.
You have to fact check that first, because we haven't come across such reports.
Okay.
I'm in contact with the police almost on a daily basis and so on. That's not an official thing. Just fact check. It could be videos from the past, maybe linked to political violence or something like that.
All right. Well, I mean, I suppose, one thing is fact-checking via the police, but the other is just fact-checking with other people. I mean, are you in a position, if not now, just now, to fact-check it and let us know even when you go off the air, because we certainly want to know?
Yeah, sure, I can.
Yeah, all right. What else then can you tell us about, the state of the Zimbabwean economy and the rationale behind the introduction of the ZiG currency from the Zimbabwean government?
Well, the general public is skeptical about this ZiG thing, because we've been down through this road, quite a number of times. You're talking about a country that has changed currencies like 6 times since independence, and all those times it was after the turn of the millennium, when government corruption, politics going wrong, and what have you. So basically, what's happening now with this ZiG, it will start losing value again, and it will add on to the zeros, until a point in time where we talk about record inflation again. So people are worried, and the fundamental is this: you want us to use this money, but we can't buy basics like fuel. I can't walk into a Peru to change, even in South Africa, to say, hey, I've got 50 zigs, I'm visiting SA, I have to change, I need money here. The money is like monopoly money. It works within Zimbabwe, and it's also limited, even if it's working within Zimbabwe.
So what has been the most common currency tradable in Zimbabwe up to like 2 weeks ago? The most common form of trading?
The American dollar.
Okay. And obviously not the Zim dollar and not South African rand. Is that used at all or not?
Yeah, it's used mostly in the southern parts of the country. It's a geographical thing, I think. But in Harare, they prefer the American dollar. But you can use the rand. But when you use the rand, they distort the rate.
Okay.
Like today, the rate is supposed to be 1:19. They will tell you it's 1:20. But yeah, you use the rand and the US dollar. The pula, nah.
Pula, no. What going forward, what is the one thing around the issue of currency that you would be looking out for as a pointer to where the currency and the economy of Zimbabwe is heading?
Well, for me, the Reserve Bank on its own should be confident about their own money. Before they come to us in the public. I mean, it was disappointing to yesterday saying he knew nothing about the structured currency with the gold. What have you? They had to learn this from an IMF consultant who told them to go this route. Well, whether it's true or not, it's out there. It's hard to believe these guys, because when they introduced the last currency that we had, the one that's outgoing, they said it was backed by a $200 million loan from Afrimex Bank.
Okay.
And for 2 years, we were told that, but the currency kept losing value right until just a few weeks ago, when they let the cat out of the bag. That money wasn't backed by anything. It's a thing to do with illusions.
All right. Got that. Lennon, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. So certainly on the issue of those pictures, the social media pictures that are showing people being beaten up, if you can in any way verify it, yay or nay, whichever one, do let us know. I'd certainly like to mention that. And it is an official statement from the Zimbabwean government around that issue and from other human rights sources. If anything, then we'd certainly love to know. I'd love to mention it on air over the next hour or two, because I think it's that important. All right. Thank you for your time.
All right.
That's Lennon.
Okay, cool.
Lennon Indibela, the head of News 24's Africa desk. What do you make of the conversation we've just had? You have an opinion on this that you feel strongly about? If that's the case, then I want to hear it. So 086 000 2032. WhatsApp, again, you have the options of text or voice notes. 0614 104 107. 0614 107. Do use the hashtag the National Pulse if you are posting on social media. By the way, there's a comment on that from TG saying, Ashraf, it'll be great if you get an official statement from the Zimbabwean government before going too far. Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. it has its own rules, and foreign media must respect that. And Zimbabweans who are in South Africa must not fight from here, and they must be careful and not go too far otherwise. So, I mean, I hear you, TG. In fact, we're not even saying it as a fact. We're asking the questions. That's exactly what we've done from a news bureau. And we're asking for further verification, not just from the government, because government always doesn't dish out the facts first up. There can be various agencies and put that all together, including the point that you make, including the government too.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, you tell me about the Zimbabwean dollar, the ZiG currency now, as it's called, and whether you from South Africa or you're in Zimbabwe, and have you been hooked onto it, or do you find there are shortcomings around it? What would you be using? You tell me, and maybe you have family or relatives in that country, and you can share your information and news about that too. Well, let's now talk about South Africa's economy. For all intents and purposes, if you look at the build-up to the election, one of the biggest issues that we all talk about is the state of our economy being in a state of disrepair, and often enough symbolized by the number of potholes we have in our country as an example, okay? But there are many other examples. So it may come as a surprise to you that, South Africa at one stage rated the number one economy in Africa and has dropped down a peg or two below Egypt and Nigeria. I understand that has changed now, South Africa back to the top. So how significant is that? Is that an issue that we need to be celebrating, or does it offer even more questions than answers? Let's get the thoughts of somebody who knows, from Professor Patrick Bond, who's a political economist and distinguished professor of sociology at the University of Johannesburg. Prof. Bond, good chatting to you, and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Oh, it's so nice to be back with you, Ashraf. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed chatting to you, I can tell you. Well, I'm going to pick your brain on this issue. Right, South Africa, number one economy in Africa. Your response to that?
This is a measure, Ashraf, called GDP, Gross Domestic Product, and it measures the income that's associated with production of goods and services every year. So we're about $375 billion worth. But let's be very clear that our output has been increasing last year, 0.6%. The problem is that we measure this in the US dollar and our currency is declining. So actually, we've been on a down, let's say, the whole decade and a half or so since our recent peak, maybe 2011, 6.3 rand to the dollar. Now we're at 19.2. So our GDP, measured in US dollars, has shrunk quite a bit since that earlier peak. That's a dilemma. It's a very strange apples and oranges kinds of exercise, especially when we add in countries, as you said, Egypt and Nigeria were ahead of us, but both have suffered currency devaluation dramatically by Nigeria, 40%, which means their economy is measured as a dollar economy, quite low, but actually per person and per local currency unit, it hasn't fallen nearly as much.
So are you saying that in the measurement of GDP, one of the factors that goes into it that has a major impact on the GDP volatility would actually be the evaluation or the devaluation of a country's currency?
Exactly, and you were talking about the case that's the most dramatic, Zimbabwe, where their currency regularly devalues to nothing, and you really have to go there, partly because in Zimbabwe, typically 85% of the currency that's used in daily life is the US dollar. And so the Zim dollar, now the ZiG, the Zimbabwe gold, is probably going to suffer the same fate because they don't really have that currency backed by gold. Devaluation for African countries usually follows the world commodity price index, because even as South Africa, which has a manufacturing base, a strong service sector, we still follow a commodity super cycle, which went through the roof. 2002 crashed, 2008 went up again, and in 2015 went for about a 7-year crash. And then in 2021, 22, it soared again. So our currency has been absolutely zigzagging. It's very hard for companies, for individuals. If you're a tourist, what do you take abroad if you're in a hard currency country in Europe or the US or UK or Japan, where you're really losing the whole time, even when the commodity super cycle is in play?
Well, all the more then, my question is, how significant is it that South Africa has now been rated once again Africa's number one economy? I mean, we've had the president celebrating, and I understand, and we've heard Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations, doing the same. So how significant is that?
Well, listen, I can't fault them. It's an election year, and they're under pressure on all sorts of fronts. Claim Amilcar Cabral, right? Tell no lies, claim no easy victories. That lesson, I think, they forget at this time of the year. Look, the crucial question isn't GDP, which is income. It's what's happening to our wealth, and there we see the flaw in this measure. The measure came from white male economists from the 1930s and 40s in the US who honed down what is income from goods and services. So if you're in the market, let's say you're a domestic worker, you sell your activities and you get a little wage. But if you're a housewife, and typically in patriarchal society like ours, then it's men who slack off, the women do the work, but it's unpaid work. That doesn't get included. And I must say, Ashraf, the other three, in addition to unpaid labor, it doesn't get counted. The other three are really brutal for us because they're local pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and the wealth in the soil that is non-renewable. So if we take minerals, our big minerals are platinum and gold, coal, iron ore, and manganese. We take them out every year, and we call it income. But actually, if you think about your future generations, your kids, Ashraf, their kids, they're losing wealth because that's our store of natural capital that we're depleting. And the GDP ignores that in a mineral-rich country, one with lots of pollution, amongst the highest levels in the world in both regular local pollution and greenhouse gases, plus lots of unpaid labor of women.
So therefore, if we then move away from the numbers, I mean, what is your sense of the general state of South Africa's economy? Just leave the numbers out at all. Just in terms of you getting to grip with the economy as a barometer of how it positively impacts South African society or negatively impacts South African society.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because the arrangement in which so much of our economy is based on the extraction of this wealth, and it doesn't lead to reinvestment. Yes, we get jobs and foreign exchange and royalties and taxes and infrastructure, but nothing like the depletion of our wealth. So I would have to answer that in a very, let's say, pessimistic way. And I'm not alone. I mean, even the World Bank, which does have numbers on pollution damage and greenhouse gas emissions and the depletion of our natural capital. So we can measure these, and they show South Africa's a net negative. What it means in a very concrete way, Ashraf, if you got up on January 1, 2023, and then you went to bed on December 31 that year, you had negative wealth. You actually, as an average South African, you lost your wealth. The measure is about 4%, according to the adjusted net savings. Doesn't that make you feel sick? You should have stayed in bed all of last year. But diamonds is now the biggest economy in Africa, so maybe that'll make you feel a little better. The rest of the continent is really getting looted.
And lastly, is there one thing, in your opinion, that South Africa needs to urgently address in addressing the economy that we're not doing at the moment? And you've got 30 seconds to answer that.
Yes, absolutely. Be aware that when you deplete mineral wealth, you lose your future generations' inheritance, and adapt to that partly by also asking, are we using too much electricity in these wealth depleting activities like deep mining and smelting and mineral processing? The answer is we are. And if we can change away from a dependence on a minerals energy complex and get into labor intensive industry and small business and women in the households getting that electricity, we could have a boom. I hope that makes you feel better. There is a way forward. The power relations aren't particularly favorable, but we could move in that direction.
And suddenly the glass is very, very, very full, not just half full. Well, that's the world. Thank you for your time. Good chatting to you, Professor Patrick Bond, and I'm sure we'll have further conversations in the days and the months ahead. Much appreciated. There we are, Professor Patrick Bond, who was a political economist and distinguished professor of sociology at UJ, University of Joburg. What do you make of that conversation? You tell me in text, voice notes, or to call in. Let's get the news headlines now with Daneo. It's 3:30.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says the employee shared ownership programs has seen a significant increase in the number of jobs these schemes have contributed to to the economy. Meanwhile, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Science and Innovation, Blade Nzimande, says SETAs have made a significant contribution in promoting employment, and 5 people have died trying to cross from France to Britain in a small boat hours after the British Parliament passed legislation designed to deter such journeys. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 will have full closure of the highway between Nelma Pierce Drive and Olifantsfontein Road on Saturday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday from 6 a.m. to 12 noon. Little Road is closed between Adam Tuss Street and Old Johannesburg Road in Centurion. That's causing some serious delays in the area. In Pretoria, Transurania Road is slow moving at Vormhagen Street, and Eskom Phleli Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing. That's towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 in both ways has roadworks with traffic restrictions in that Cliffdale area. The R620 is closed in the central Margate area due to storm damage, and Belair Road has roadworks with traffic restrictions near Chief Albert Luthuli Hospital. In the Eastern Cape on the R369, protest action between Tsolo and Maclear, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, Baden-Powell Drive is closed between Swartklip Road and Oscar Mpeta Road due to protesting, so expect delays and diversions. On the N2 outbound, a crash before Baden-Powell Drive exit. All lanes are open. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit, and the M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
And the whistle is blown for the sports report. Go ahead.
Well, a very good afternoon to you. We start things off with football. It's back to PSL business for Mamelodi Sundowns, who face Kukune United in the DStv Premiership at Loftus tonight. Sundowns midfielder Batusi Abaz says that they will not undermine Babina Noko, who are 4th on the log, and are in confident mood after coach Likhono Losiema and captain Linda Mtomba were voted coach and player of the month recently.
First of all, I know they've been doing well, and then the likes of Linda Mtambo, he has been in injury, and then he came back, and then he has been doing well, and then helped the team, and then he got a player of the month, and then also their coach got a coach of the month, and they won 2 games and draw 3.
Well, then, catching up with the Hollywood Bet Super League in women's football, University of Johannesburg ladies coach Ntabeleng Dunga Mudigo's objective is for her team to improve from last season's inconsistent performance and to finish top 8. UJ ladies are sitting 3rd on the log with 16 points behind the University of Pretoria and 4 times titles. Mamelodi Sundowns ladies.
Mine is just, it's a simple one. I've always just said to myself that I always have to be better than I was the last time. So my ambition this year is just to be better, better as a coach, better as a human being, and also just to be better for the game. I think if I'm better, then it also just goes to my players. They get to be improved as well. So my personal ambition this season is just to be better than last year. We finished badly. We finished on 9th position. So anything better than 9th position is exactly that for me.
There's some Premier League action to look forward to tonight, and Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says that Arsenal will give all they have to win a first Premier League title since 2003. The Gunners face Chelsea tonight, with the Blues going into the game on the back of an FA Cup semi-final exit to Manchester City on Saturday. Now, the Blues are still bidding for a European spot next season, and Arteta believes that their London rivals have undergone a huge improvement in recent months, and they deserve to be in a higher position.
Huge improvements. I think they deserve to be in a much higher position in the league when you look at what they've done and what they produce in games. They have reached a final, they have reached a semi-final, they could have gone through. So I think what Mauricio is doing is really impressive, and I'm sure that he's going to get them there.
Meanwhile, FA Cup final between holders Manchester City and Manchester United will kick off at 3 p.m. local time. That's 4 p.m. SA time. And welcome news for travelling fans who often struggle with late kickoffs. Now, the final on the 25th of May will see the two sides from Manchester face off at London's Wembley Stadium for the second year in a row. In tennis, world number one Novak Djokovic has pulled out of the Madrid Open to give himself enough time to prepare for the Roland Garros. Djokovic is yet to win a title this season and has only played in 4 tournaments this year, having decided to lighten his load. And he says that he's also hoping to play at the Italian Open. In motorsport, Thailand says that they are keen to host the F1 race on the streets of Bangkok. No time frame or detailed plans have been announced, but the Thai officials told local media that they envisage the race being run on a street circuit, possibly around the city's historic centre. Then to round things up in terms of women in sports, Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis will from Thursday be officially known as Dr. Desiree Ellis. The Cape Peninsula University of Technology will award the 4-time CAF Woman Coach of the Year with an honorary doctorate for her contribution to sports. So the accolades keep coming in for her. Remember, just last year, I think April 2023, she received the Order of Ikamanga from President Cyril Ramaphosa for her contribution in sports. So a big congratulations to her, and she continues doing well nonetheless.
Here's some trivia. Who's the first footballer to receive an honorary doctorate?
First footballer?
Yeah. Dr. Kamala. I'm only joking, okay? Let me keep quiet.
Wow,
But listen, here's a more serious question.
Yeah.
I'm listening to Bangkok pitching for a Formula One Grand Prix. Doesn't it irritate you that South Africa, democratic South Africa, is unable to host an F1, whereas apartheid South Africa did?
Sure, it really sucks, because at one stage we were literally on the verge, or maybe our hopes were raised that it would be hosted at the Kyalami.
Or it was in Cape Town.
Or even in Cape Town. However, it's just too much. It's a lot. Like, it costs a lot to just host.
But they make money. The brand value is enormous. But anyway, I certainly want it. I'm not crazy about F1,
I'd love
but I would
to
be
see
there.
it, yeah. I mean, Lewis Hamilton wants to come to South Africa.
Well, there you are. We'll even call him Dr. Lewis Hamilton if he gets it right.
That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Kapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Merupa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Why can't we host a Formula One Grand Prix? Answers, you tell me. There's a message from Leo, considering the question I had about driving, right? Learning as a skill, learning to read, listen actively, and think critically is so important nowadays, especially with all the time we spend on screens. These skills help you think independently and make informed choices while also encouraging a healthy balance with less screen time too. Well, Leo, good point. I really think each one of us needs to internalize to say, which are the 5 skill sets that we don't have at the moment that are important life skills that we're going to adopt, like learning how to drive, but there's 5 others. Which ones are they? And then commit ourselves to do that. In fact, I need to be making a plan myself. Let's get the thoughts of KG now. Hi, KG.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Thanks for joining the National Pulse. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, my attitude is, it is very clear that the people in charge, they are out of their depth. They are clueless. They don't know what they're doing.
The people in charge who? I mean, you're not clear. Which?
In Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Yes, I'm on this big story.
Right, okay.
And unfortunately, the only people who are suffering in this whole setup, in this whole experimenting and trying all these unworkable things, is the Zimbabwean population.
But why do you think they're clueless? I mean, isn't it good not to have the American dollar as your local currency? I wouldn't want to have it.
Yeah, but Ashraf, if you've had a new currency 6 times in a certain space of time, then it suggests that you are clueless.
How do they fix it? Those who are clueless.
Yes, that is where I'm coming to now. They must accept that they are leaders of commerce and leaders of economics and society and everything. Yes? They must go to those people and take instructions. If the instructions is comply with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fundamentals, they must forget this thing that now we are being recolonized, this fancy stuff they want to talk about, you know. Get the sanctions, comply with the requirement to have the sanctions dropped altogether so that economy can start functioning. Stop leaning to the likes of China and Russia, because unfortunately China, for example, they will pump a lot of money into a country, but in that process, I forgot the term that I wanted to use, but have a hold on that country to say, if you cannot pay us back, basically we take control, we repossess the country like they wanted to do in, I think it was in Zambia, when they wanted to repossess the Zambian airport due to bad debt of that particular government. You know, try to lean to people who've proved that they will come into your country, Ashraf, and say, your governance issues, your institutions, your fundamentals, are they in place? If not, please do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And after you've done that, they give you support without the threat of now we are going to like, you know, cede your country or your airport or your parliament or whatever. That they see, like
well, let's see what happens. I mean, I hear what you're talking about, reform, ensure the country does not have sanctions, it'll flourish. On the other hand, I certainly wouldn't want to have an American dollar as my country's currency. But the third part, maybe to the average citizen of a country, is honestly, often enough, they're not interested in the ideology of a country. They're like, can you just change our lives for the better? I mean, the same question can be applied to South Africa. At the end of the day, I think many people don't even care what happens right on top. It's like, but can you just fix up my streets? Can you make sure that I've got food on my table and for myself and my family? Thanks for that call, KG. Certainly got us thinking and reflecting that internally to the National Pulse, both in South Africa as well as in Zimbabwe. Let's stay with further thoughts around Zimbabwe. There's a series of voice notes that we got. Let's play one.
Good afternoon, my brother and SAFM listeners. It's quite pathetic that the government of Zimbabwe, they introduced the currency that themselves in their salaries they don't want it, they want it in US dollars. In their offices, government offices like passport offices, they don't accept their own currency. They want US dollars. It's quite pathetic. I sympathize with the people of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, my brother. But it's not quite pathetic. I think there's a reason why they want Zimbabwean, they want American dollars. I mean, just work it out in terms of it has more value to them. Why would a trader sort of receive 100 rands and then within one day the 100 rand becomes 80 rands? Would you accept that? I mean, think about it. There's another comment also on the same issue.
Good evening, Ashraf and SAFM listeners. Well, with regards to Zimbabwe's currency and how it's losing value, this is what happens when politicians start interfering with monetary policy. This is what happens when a central bank loses its independence. I hope we as South Africans take heed to what Lisitje Kganyago said, that they do not want political interference in the Reserve Bank. They are the economists. They know how to conduct monetary policy. So this is what happens when a government starts printing money in order to create revenue. Thanks. This is Lionel from Woodbank.
Lionel from Woodbank, and say good evening. Lionel, I thought you were in Singapore or Malaysia or Australia when you said good evening. I'm like, wow. In fact, okay, Lionel's in Woodbank. Where else are you listening from? People are listening on radio around the country. People are listening on streaming live, not just in South Africa, but around the world. So if you're in the country, tell me where you're from, where you're listening from right now. If you are listening on streaming live around the world, in Singapore, for example, let me know where you are and what you're doing in that country. I'd certainly love to know, okay? Let's play another, and this relates to the police in Zimbabwe.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and your guest there in the valley. What we know so far about this Zimbabwe issue thing, you know what, Ashraf? These street vendors, police are right whipping them, because these are the people, when government is trying to put nice laws so that people won't just spread all over the world, they just put the money in their pockets, trying to raise the interest, raising everything. Now they're trying to kill the sick again. So the policemen are right. Let them whip them and jail them. Those people are the people who are making life tough for ordinary Zimbabweans, because they're doing it for their own pockets. So I think the policemen are right. The policemen are right there. Yeah, the policemen are doing the right thing. Let criminals be arrested. Criminals must not just they like yeah, what is done here in South Africa. No. The Zimbabwean police are right. They must whip them hard, all these money changers.
Criminals must be arrested. Got that. In Zimbabwe, in South Africa, anywhere else around the world. What is it that gets your pulses racing here? This is the National Pulse, you tell me. As always, you can tweet out as well, by the way, using the hashtag The National Pulse. Then you tag SFM Radio on the X platform and tag me, Ashraf Garda. But also follow us on Facebook too. But again, WhatsApp, text, voice notes and call-ins are first prize.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Hi guys, your favorite mom vlogger here, talking all things family entertainment with Deal or No Deal now on SABC2 weekdays at 6:30 p.m. Umalume is trying to make it onto the show and have his life changed quick. Amanda Malume. Mama and I are the #1 Mubango fans at 9 p.m. all week because the storylines stay hot. And my two little people can't wait for May when Raid the Cage kicks off with SABC2. See La Familia, keeping those family bonds strong. Until next time.
Come test drive the new Ford Territory, the family SUV with a 1.8-litre EcoBoost engine that is both powerful and fuel efficient. Get yours at launch prices from only 590,000 Rand, including an optional service plan for a limited time only. Get to your nearest Ford dealer and test drive the new Ford Territory today. T&Cs apply. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, I continue now. We'll have an update on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial that comes up pretty shortly. We'll talk about that. And after the news, we're going to pick up on the issue of the youth unemployment crisis. It's just not going away, isn't it? So we'll talk about that. And we'll pick up on the issue of fuel retailers impacted by a recent Supreme Court of Appeal hearing and how that impacts in terms of owners. And then we'll chat to Tessa Dooms about South Africa, the state South Africa, the economy. So many of things for you to look out for and look forward to in the next half an hour or so, right? Well, here's an issue that has been global for a long, long time in the last few months, and it has an impact on all of us. The UN Secretary General has accepted the recommendations contained in an independent review group into the operations of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East. The review, chaired by the former French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna, working with 3 European research institutes, were established to assess whether the UNRWA was doing everything within its power to ensure neutrality and to make recommendations to improve this and strengthen work in this area if necessary. Now, the review commenced, you may remember, soon after Israel leveled untested allegations against several UNRWA staff, accusing them of colluding in the October 7th Hamas attack. But as you now know, these claims did not form part of the panel's review. There was also an issue that there was funding that was withdrawn because of those allegations. Here's more from Sherwin Bryce-Pease.
The review found that Israel had never expressed formal concern about anyone on UNRWA's staff lists that it received annually. And while not mandated to verify the allegations of terror links by UNRWA staff, the report states that Israel has yet to provide supporting evidence to its accusations that led to key donors suspending funding of around $450 million. Listen to the chair of the independent review group, Catherine Colonna.
In the absence of a political solution, we know it provides life-saving humanitarian aid and essential services to the population. And of course, as we speak in this critical time, UNRWA has a vital role in the humanitarian response in Gaza. Overall, the findings of the review are that UNRWA has in place a very significant number of mechanisms and procedures to ensure compliance with the humanitarian principle of neutrality. Actually, it probably have a more developed system than other UN organizations or agencies, which is a necessity considering the very difficult environment, complex and difficult situation in which they operate, and the uniqueness of their mission. There's always room for improvement, and some issues related to neutrality persist.
The report makes 8 recommendations in a number of key areas, including greater engagement with donors to enhance transparency and address the trust deficit, strengthening governance structures in support of leadership, enhanced management and internal oversight, the neutrality of staff in an agency that faces challenges of politicization among workers, neutrality of installations in the context that UNRWA facilities are sometimes misused for political or military gains, neutrality of education that upholds UN standards, the neutrality of staff unions, and enhanced cooperation with all UN agencies to help ensure delivery of life-saving humanitarian operations in Gaza.
I would like to stress that the international community has a responsibility in helping and supporting UNRWA in addressing neutrality issues, globally speaking, in its mission, including in helping the agency to address these difficult challenges it faces sometimes. It is a shared responsibility. We have recommendations for governance. Without changing the mandate, it is what it is, and the structure is what it is. I recommend the Advisory Commission to meet more regularly, maybe at a higher level, sometimes at the UN headquarters, here in New York or in Geneva. Why not? At the level of permanent reps. I recommend to have neutrality as a standing issue on its agenda.
The UN Chief Antonio Guterres has pledged, along with the Commissioner General of UNRWA, to establish an action plan to implement the panel's recommendations. His spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric.
The Secretary General accepts the recommendations contained in Ms. Colonna's report. He has agreed with the Commissioner General, Philippe Lazzarini, that UNRWA, with the Secretary General's own support, will establish an action plan to implement the recommendations contained in Ms. Colonna's final report. In this regard, the Secretary General counts on the cooperation of the donor community, the host countries, and the staff of UNRWA to fully cooperate with the implementation of the recommendations. Moving forward, the Secretary General appeals to all stakeholders to actively support UNRWA as it is a lifeline for Palestine refugees in the region.
A separate investigation into Israeli allegations that 12 UNRWA staff supported the Hamas attack on October 7th has yet to be completed by the UN Office for Internal Oversight Services. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Right, let's move on to another important issue, the ongoing conversation on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Right now, yesterday, lots of drama because names were pointed out in terms of who may have killed Senzo Meyiwa, right? Let's find out what happened today in court with Pearl Magubane, who, as always, covers that story on behalf of SABC News. Pearl, hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to the listeners.
Thank you. Is today as dramatic as yesterday?
Not at all. It was pretty calm and back to the basic docket which is before the court and the facts that have been represented thus far, we had defense counsel, who basically just focused his cross-examination on the clothing that was allegedly worn by accused number 2, saying that that hoodie was never found by the police, and going to the fact that all the people that were inside the house never identified Bongani Ntanzi positively, and the characteristics that they gave to the sketch artist did not reflect that of Bongani Ntanzi. The only, let's say, any dramatic thing you would say, be a warrant of arrest that is in the docket. It's a draft application that's supposed to go to Kelly Khumalo, who has been allegedly fingered by 2 of the accused as being the one that hired the assassin to kill Meyiwa, but that warrant was never issued. And Mogola was questioned about it, but she did not have answers, and all the responses said any answer would be responded by Brigadier Gelinda, who's the lead investigating officer.
And any expectations of what will be discussed tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow we have Sergeant Mogola back on the stand just for one last cross-examination for Charles Mnisi, who represents accused number 3. Unfortunately, he was not in court today. He did excuse himself from yesterday already. So Charles Mnisi just needs to go through evidence with regards to accused number 3. And yeah, that would be it. We have a host who's expected back on the stand, but he is the one that went through forensic details of the data, the cell phone data, but his testimony has been stood down for Monday instead of this Friday. So we're just going to wait for short cross-examination from Mogola and see who the state is going to call next.
All right, so let's leave it at that. If there's nothing else you wish to tell us that's important, Pearl, for today?
No, I think the main issue was just the warrant of arrest that Mogola could not account for, and no response. Let's just say that today she seemed a bit shaken given the drama from yesterday. She was not as confident. Just her voice trembled a couple of times since they brought up allegations from the different docket. But, most of the questions she said that Brigadier Gelinda would respond to, and she was highly criticized by the defense team, saying that she's part of the investigating team. She should know the answers, but, she's just left all the big questions to the lead investigating officer. Okay, that's where I can leave it. Thanks for your time. We will chat to you tomorrow, I'm sure of that, Pearl Magubane. Another day in court around the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. There's lots of comments about Zimbabwe, lots of comments about the South African economy, lots of comments about a doctorate or an honorary doctorate, which is now very, very topical, not just because of Desiree Ellis, but because of others in other spaces, as you may know, and lots of conversation also about those important life skills that I touched on in my That's My Point feature at the beginning of the show, in terms of what for you are like the absolute key life skills that you have to have. Some of the comments... Ashraf and the SFM listeners, Zimbabwe government is controlling all the activities, so there's no independence by the Reserve Bank and all institutions, the economy. So from the land redistribution to elections, and everything is done to cover up for the ZANU-PF mistakes so that they cling to power and escape imprisonment. A new government will bring change to Zimbabwe because it's a rich country lacking leadership. That's one opinion. Here's another one. Can you enlighten me how a currency works for a country? Can I wake up and make more money? I remember one time having 5 Rand fake coins. Yeah, those ended up being legal from Laurie. The fake ones ended up being legal. Well, maybe you can tell us how your fake coins ended up being legal overnight. I'm just thinking about Pinocchio or someone, or Geppetto sleeping. You tell me, how does a fake coin, when you go to bed, become not fake in the morning? Then we all want to know about that. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Daneo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. Ibrahim Patel speaks on workers' ownership programs, and 5 migrants died trying to cross from France to Britain. A very good afternoon to you. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says the employee shared ownership programs has seen a significant increase in the number of jobs these schemes have contributed to the economy. Patel was speaking at the inaugural Worker Shared Ownership Conference in Sandton, Johannesburg today. Patel says since 2019, the Worker Shared Ownership program has seen gaining momentum to ensure economic growth that will see less poverty and inequality in the country.
To address inequality in ways that also enhance growth and social cohesion. One part of this program is the initiative to foster more meaningful worker ownership and participation in the economy. Today, workers throughout South Africa have the opportunity to become owners in the companies they serve, allowing them to make significant contributions to those companies' successes.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Science and Innovation, Blade Nzimande, says SETAs have made a significant contribution in promoting employment. Delivering a keynote address during the SETA Skills Summit in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, Nzimande says 70% of SETA trainees get absorbed in the job market. The summit conference aims to facilitate collaboration of SETA operations on programs offered. Nzimande says the training aligns with the demands of the labour market.
To help us appreciate the importance of this summit, I wish to highlight a few key things. The first is the important role that is played by our SETAs in skills development in our country. Some of the SETA monies must contribute to building infrastructure because you can't train without that infrastructure. I am glad that we are prioritizing this and we are integrating it into our national skills development thinking. So this is very important, precisely to improve capacity for provision of services.
We shift gear now to some election news. IEC Chairperson Mosotho Myepa has urged South Africans to safeguard the integrity of the country's democracy. In just 39 days, South Africans will be heading to the polls in what has been termed as the most defining election since the dawn of democracy. Myepa was speaking at the Gauteng Province Code of Conduct signing ceremony in Kempton Park today. He says South Africans must reject any division that may be caused by the result of the elections.
We have learned that elections, because of their very nature, the contest that they are, a bruising one at that, we know that they sometimes lead to unsavory behavior and conduct. We have sometimes witnessed instances where this very code of conduct that we are going to have signed here can be flouted. We have seen political discourse descend into acrimony, and where the very essence of our electoral democracy has been challenged.
In other news, the decision by the Northern Cape Liquor Board to lift the restriction on the sale of alcohol on Sundays and extension of nightclub hours has been met with mixed reactions. Some have warned of the province reversing the gains made in dealing with fetal alcohol syndrome. Northern Cape Moral Regeneration Movement chairperson Fatima Malo says authorities should have organized public hearings before the implementation of what they call an ill-considered decision.
We already have high stats of gender-based violence, of which most of them happen when people come from taverns or shebeens. So we cannot accept and tolerate and say it is fine for the liquor board to make a decision without even consulting society regarding this decision that they made. It's a wrong decision. It is not right. You cannot have a tavern opening from 6 and close at 6 in the morning. People have responsibilities. People must be at work.
Lastly, 5 people have died trying to cross from France to Britain in a small boat hours after the British Parliament passed legislation designed to deter such journeys. 4 other migrants have been taken to hospital. French officials say 112 people were on board the overcrowded vessel. The BBC's Simon Jones has the details.
We're told that this boat got stranded on a sandbank shortly after setting off from a beach in Wimereux in northern France, which is along the coast from Calais, more towards Boulogne. Now, after getting stuck on a sandbank, the boat then managed to relaunch into the water, but there was some sort of incident involving the crowd, as the French authorities call it, on board that boat, and we're told that 5 people lost their lives, among them 3 men, a woman and a young child.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says the employee shared ownership programs has seen a significant increase in the number of jobs these schemes have contributed to the economy. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dino Mutaung.
In sports, Stormers turning up the intensity in training ahead of their clash against Leinster this weekend, and Nareen rules out West Indies' return for home T20 World Cup. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in Parktown is queuing towards St Andrews Road. The M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and Bears Nadir Drive westbound in Rand Park Ridge is slow moving at Malope Road. In KZN, the N3 has roadworks with major upgrade works between Spaghetti Junction and the M13 Paradise Valley Interchange. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The M7 eastbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions approaching Bel Air Road, and the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck after Peter Brown Drive exit. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a crash just before Baden-Powell Drive exit causing delays. The N1 inbound has a crash on the link to the M5 South at Kuburg Interchange. Batencross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway in the CBD, and Main Road outbound is slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial star 120 star 332# to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC 1.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but Tears Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus Tears Galaxy Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Tell you what, the conversation we've been having about the Zimbabwean currency and therefore the Zimbabwean, the state of the Zimbabwean economy has certainly got lots of people talking and certainly got their pulses racing about the national pulse of that country. But of course, what happens in that country impacts this country, so they absolutely are linked. And I would think that our next conversation around youth unemployment should certainly get us and our pulses racing, absolutely, as well as a chat we'll have later on with Tessa Dooms about, the link between the state and the economy in South Africa. So all those things will get you thinking, and we'll chat. We'll get another take on what's happened around Zimbabwe and the way forward for that country. As always, you can connect with us in multiple ways. You can tweet out tagging SAFM Radio and Ashraf Garda. That's my Twitter account on the X platform. Do use that hashtag, the National Pulse. Do the same if you're on SAFM Radio on the Facebook page too. But if you wish to call in, those that are brave enough, which is always great to connect with you live on air, wherever you may be, 086 000 2032, and love to hear new voices, young, old, male, female, wherever you are, employed, unemployed, different voices on this on the show. You can WhatsApp in text or voice note form, 0614 104 107, and do tell me if you're listening on streaming live, even if you're not, where are you listening to us right now from? In South Africa, where? On the African continent, where? Around the world, where? Tell me where you're listening from. I would love to know. Right, let's now talk about the solutions for youth unemployment. I would love to know that, isn't it? But I'm battling, and I think so is everybody else. In fact, I'll tell you what, looking at the elections run up again, those stories about reducing youth unemployment seems to be like a copy and paste every year, and I don't see much changes. But really, what is the roadmap for the future? So let's find out from an organization that speaks a lot about just that, the issue of youth unemployment and the crisis we face in our country. And I'm talking about the Youth Capital Project, and their leader is Crystal Duncan-Williams. Crystal, good chatting to you, and thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Thank you. Now, we know you and I have had many conversations on other platforms before, but the issue of youth unemployment just does not go away, right? Let's talk firstly about your understanding about the gravity of the problem. I mean, what do the stats tell us?
Mm-hmm. Well, the stats tell us that if we had to have young people lining up, shoulder to shoulder, all of the young people not in employment, education or training, that line would stretch all the way from Cape Town right the way through to nearly Lagos, Nigeria. That's what the stats tell us. And every year we are adding to that pool. The jobs we are creating are a drop in the ocean, and our research shows that even when the economy is growing, we often are creating jobs for older people, not young people. And so that line of young people that are locked out of the labor market is continuing to grow, and it has been growing for the past 2 decades.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a horrific image, and I'm looking at this image now, not from Cape to Cairo, but Cape to Lagos. And the question is, how do we get from Cape to Namibia or, pretty soon? I mean, it's a huge problem.
Absolutely, and you just mentioned, we have these promises, whether it be from a political party or various different government departments, that we're going to create so many jobs. But we're talking about a couple of thousand, and obviously every job counts, but the scale of the problem is so huge that we really need to think about how do these different programs, whether you're creating 1,000 jobs here, 40,000 jobs there, 600,000 jobs, these big numbers we get promised. How do these pieces tie together? And why are these promises really ever seem to come true? I think it's because government generally, whether we're talking about the ruling party or the other parties vying for the election, fail to understand the complexities of youth unemployment. It is not just about jobs. It is about preparing young people for the world of work. It's having an infrastructure that leaves many young people disconnected from economic opportunity. It's about young people not having the social networks to find those opportunities when they do exist. It's about an education system that doesn't support young people to get the right skills for the 21st century workplace. So, it's layered and complex.
Well, I mean, therefore, if a young person of let's say 25 or so, picks up their hand and says, why is our unemployment so high that it can stretch from Cape Town to Lagos, as you've just mentioned, then what is the answer to that? So why do we have, it sounds very simplistic, me asking this question, but maybe we need that simple question to get a profound answer. Why do we have this problem? And why is it not less? What's the issue here?
I think for the longest time, and I've been encouraged recently, even the president said, I think it was in one of the newsletters, we need a basket of solutions, which Youth Capital actually thinks it's our terminology. But I think for the longest time, we thought there was a silver bullet. We could just create jobs, we'd solve the problem. If we just get young people to go to university, we'll solve the problem. We'll give free education, that'll solve the problem. We'll give an employment tax incentive to businesses to hire young people, that'll solve the problem. We'll have tax incentives through things like the Youth Employment Service. We will give tax incentives to businesses to fund young people on one-year learnerships. And in and of itself, none of these things are not true. But it's understanding that that's one part of a much bigger and more complex problem. And until you put all the pieces together, you're going to continue to fall flat, right? So if a business just creates a one-year opportunity, but the economy is not growing, then after the opportunity ends, that young person steps back into nothing after that. If you train up young people, but they're all studying business administration at a TVET and the market is saturated, then even though they have that qualification, and if they've had NSFAS funding, which is another story of NSFAS, but let's assume it worked and young people had their money and they got their qualification, that is not a valuable qualification in the labor market. So it's all of these things. And until we unpack that complexity, we are going to continue to see this problem growing. I mean, globally, youth employment is a problem. The world of work is rapidly changing. How we think about work, how we think about skills is changing. And I think South Africa is really on the back foot there as well.
So, I mean, you did say it's this bouquet of problems. I understand that. But, I mean, therefore, if you look at the two issues that you touch on, is the rate of unemployment so high because the numbers of people that are unskilled and therefore unemployable are a problem? Is that the one issue? Or is the other issue that there's a vast number of people who are skilled in jobs or vocations that are unable to deliver to the demands of the world of work of today?
I think it's a little bit of everything again, but so there's the skills, they are the skills that the 21st century workplace needs. But then there are the things that South Africa, society like South Africa needs. We hear this often where there's a shortage of jobs, but there isn't a shortage of work to be done. There's work that is needed in communities that doesn't require you to be able to code or be a maths genius, right? But we need the necessary funding and provision so that that work can be paid for in communities. We see young people and old people, people across different ages stepping up to fill the needs of community through, community health workers, through young people starting reading clubs. You see the public employment program, the basic education employment initiative where we have teachers' assistants in schools. All of these are things that communities need. They're skills and jobs in communities that the community cannot pay for and therefore have to be provided through some kind of government intervention. So there's all of this kind of work that needs to be done. And then you look at what is government's role in funding people to do that work that a corporate company is never going to pay for. So that's one side, and that's nothing to do with skill. That's just needs that communities have. There are people to do the work. I think we just need to think about that better. And then there's the technical skills for specific areas like, fourth industrial revolution, or if we're speaking about very kind of vocational works like electricians, plumbers, etc. And I think that pipeline needs a lot of work as well in South Africa. So there's two sides to the coin. It's not just about skills. And I think sometimes we think that it is.
Now, there's no question every one of us, including everybody listening nationwide with their pulses to the nation, would want to have that unemployment rate going down. There's no question about that, right? Therefore, in terms of where you sit at Youth Capital, in terms of your research and your understanding, is there anybody, be it government, be it a government agency, be it big business, be it some bright spark on the outside, whoever that is, maybe even somebody within Youth Capital, does anybody have a roadmap for you that is great enough for you to say, wow, we think we've actually got a potential solution that, if implemented, will change the terrain of our country with regard to jobs, or not?
I think what we need is obviously a lot of it is through the government, and the government's ability to work cross-departmentally is historically terrible. But when we look at things like the Basic Education Employment Initiative, we do see the Office of the Presidency, the Department of Basic Education really came together to make that program a success. We need to see more of that. Where we can even grow that, and I think there's room for improvement, is the private sector. So when these short-term public employment programs end, what is the private sector role in giving that young person the next step, and how do we make those partnerships work better? I don't think it's realistic for anyone to have the full solution. That's why Youth Capital has its 10-point action plan, and under each of the 10 points, there's another 10 points. It's really complex. But for us, especially as we, look towards elections, we look to possibly quite a different-looking parliament. In the next 5 years, we are looking at public employment program. We know that first work experience is key. So how can we do that? We're looking at public employment programs as a key way to get young people into a first work experience. Okay. We need to look at that scaling point, and then we need to look at a thriving economy for small and medium businesses to be able to create those jobs for young people. So
let's end by flipping this around, and let's see where the power lies, if anything. So a person listening to you and I talk right now is unemployed, okay? And desperately so, because this has been ongoing for like 6 months to a year to 2 years, okay? We're not even discussing their skills. What advice could you give them now, to that unemployed person listening to you and me talk?
I think the easiest way is to reach out to people outside of your social circle. The other young people that you're sitting with, the people in your household who are unemployed, they're in the same boat that you're in, right? How do young people access, and I don't think it's on young people. A lot of the time in this capital, we're like, young people can only do so much. They can look for jobs. They can sign up on all the millions of job platforms that exist. They can keep searching. But the responsibility almost lies with those who are in jobs with social connections to reach out to young people. And I say this because anybody can do this. Anybody can reach out to a young person, help him write a CV, help him prepare for a job interview. And that might seem like a small, insignificant thing with 9 million, young people locked out of the labor market, but it's not. it can change the trajectory of that person to have that exposure. So, that's like a very easy, low-hanging fruit that we can all do. It doesn't require government intervention or mass infrastructure development or any of the other things.
Okay, so by ending, I'm going to challenge every one of us, including you and I and everybody listening, is this. Forget the young person and them knocking on your door. You know the young people in your family, in your street, in your community, in your city. You know those young people who are unemployed. You know that they've been looking around for a job. How about you approaching them and then approaching them on the basis of creating an intervention with your own social circle outside that young person's social circle to try everything you can do to get that person employed? That's the champion challenge. That's what champions do. Can we all do that? And I'm going to try and be a bit more serious about that myself with a whole lot of people that we may well identify. Let's leave it at that. Crystal, Duncan, Williams, feel free, by the way, to tweet out some of the thoughts that you guys have had and shared as well. And you can just tag SAFM Radio and do tag me as well, Ashraf Garda. Thank you for your time.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but Tears Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus Tears Galaxy Ladies FC on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Right, so here's another story that should, that will fuel debate, I'm sure about that, okay, besides the issue of jobs. And if you have been in a position where you could approach someone today about getting them a job, an older person getting a younger person a job, please let me know what happened there. I want to know, okay? Now, a recent decision by the Supreme Court of Appeal will mean that when existing fuel retail license holders, listen to this, fuel retail license holders, existing ones that is, when they challenge the issuing of new licenses, the new license will be suspended until the Minister of Energy decides on the matter. So I'm just trying to think now, does that mean if I apply for a license, the existing ones that object will then result in the new license issue being suspended? Okay, that's my understanding, and I think it's got implications. So let's find out more about it with the Fuel Retailer Association of Southern Africa's CEO, Reggie Sibia. Reggie, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. So I've sort of guessed what it means. You better tell us what it means in terms of the judgment.
Yes, Ashraf, let me first just quickly explain the process because then it contextualizes everything. So being a regulated market, the Section 2E of the Petroleum Products Act actually gives powers to the minister to regulate the licenses, including the issuing of licenses. And in that process, then there are two distinct steps. The first step is what we call the objection. So when a new site is being proposed, there is understanding, of course, that it's got to have impact negatively in most cases, but not always, to the existing, service stations in terms of volumes. As you may know, the service station petroleum business is driven by volumes and very low margins.
Yeah.
So there is a benchmark volume that is used to say this is what the service station should pump in order to be viable. So let me just leave it there. So it's based on that. So then, if then the two things can happen at the objection phase. The controller of petroleum products can actually either approve the licenses for the new applicants or they can reject it based on the submissions that have been made by both parties. So if the controller actually issues the license, the PPA then allows for an appeal process to the minister. So that has always been happening. Now, why is this case now suddenly so important? It's because there's been a frustration in the process. And number one, you need to understand that this actually benefits also the applicants. Let me start with the applicants. If you are the person building the service station, now the controller gives you the license. But the Act still says that the objector can go a step further and appeal. Imagine now you've got this license, you start building, you are investing your money. And in the process of having invested your money, then the appeal works against you.
Because everything is on hold, right?
Sorry.
Because everything would be on hold if an existing fuel station then appeals my application.
Well, in the new dispensation after this judgment, I'm just explaining now. Now it doesn't work that way, which is actually doesn't make sense. That I'll be allowed to start building when I know that the appeal has not been heard, and the appeal may actually be against me, which means I've got now to stop everything I've started. It means I've wasted my investment. So there is a sense in the judgment of saying you cannot actually issue these licenses and allow people to build the service stations before the appeal outcome is heard, because then if it's against you as an investor, then you've lost everything. So it does benefit the applicant. But also, this whole process, both the objection and the appealing, is very important, and it needs to be thorough in that it just needs to analyze whether there is a justification for a new service station or not. And that's why the process would look at things like volumes, the impact on jobs, and the income, etc., etc. But here is the problem, Ashraf. The problem here, why we're in this quagmire today, is because the department is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. In 2014, there was a popular case 99 used to be called. And it was a high court judgment as well, which ordered the minister to actually go back to the drawing board in line with Section 2E of the PPA and prescribe clearly the system and the guidelines of issuing these licenses so that there is no confusion.
But
that has not happened.
But here's the thought, and I hear what you're saying, right? So we've got about a minute to go. I mean, let me understand this. I intend to set up a fuel station, a petrol station at a certain suburb, right? Isn't it? You're saying if a person objects, if another filling station objects or fuel setup objects, then everything's on hold because you don't want me to waste money and potentially lose that money. I hear that part. That's the good news. But isn't then the objection going to be automatic because of a way of keeping people out? So monopolizing, the simplest way to monopolize is just object.
No, it's not. Because the decision to issue the licenses still lies with the controller, not with the objectors. So the controller is there to look at all the facts and to look at this thing objectively and then to issue the outcome based on that.
But what's the time span between, application and objection and ruling? Typically, how long does that take?
It's supposed to be 60 days. The controller must make a decision from the date of application. And then in terms of the appeal, the minister should actually conclude that appeal within 90 days. But that is not happening. That's another problem which was highlighted in the case.
Let's leave it at that.
More than that.
But you see, that's the problem. If it's 30 days and 90 days and it goes beyond that, in fact, any objection ensures that there's at least a 6-month or a year potentially delay in this new investor in that area, which actually means the existing incumbent, well, they certainly will make hay while the sun shines. Thanks for your time. Most appreciated. Got us thinking there, Reggie Sibiya, the CEO of the Fuel Retailer Association of Southern Africa. I wonder what you, in the fuel business, or the one who fills up petrol, what do you make of all of this? Think about that. Let's get the news headlines now with Taneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. Government says it's unlikely to meet its targets in settling land claims for the 2023-24 and 2024-25 financial years. In other news, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says the employee shared ownership programs has seen a significant increase in the number of jobs these schemes have contributed to the economy, and a furious dispute has erupted between Elon Musk and the Australian government over access to footage that shows a stabbing in a church in Sydney last week. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Eva Chiba.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Transurania Road in Pretoria is slow moving, and that's at Vormhagen Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The M19 westbound in Westville is queuing towards Dunkel Road exit. The N3 eastbound in Ashburton has a stationary truck at Linville Park. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck just after Peter Brown Drive exit. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. Turfel Road is slow moving through Anova Park, and Spine Road westbound queuing at Jafta K Misamolo Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, big stories.
Right, we start things off with rugby this hour. Ruben van Heerden says that the focus this week is attitude and intensity as the Stormers embrace the challenge of a massive clash with Leinster at the DHL Stadium on Saturday. A visit from 8-time champions Leicester after a narrow loss to Ospreys present the Stormers with an opportunity for an emphatic rebound, and van Heerden emphasized the importance of returning to winning ways with a huge performance. Leinster will also be mustering a response after a heavy defeat to the Lions in Johannesburg, but van Heerden believes that the Stormers have structures in place for success. In the meantime, Tuks rugby team is on the verge of making rugby history on Friday when they take on Varsity College in the Varsity Shield final. If victorious, Tuks will be the only team in the history of varsity rugby to have won both the Cup and the Shield trophies. Then in football, Kukune United assistant coach McDonald Makubedu has welcomed tonight's test against reigning DStv Premiership champions Mamelodi Sundowns. Babina Nogo are yet to lose a league game in 2024, while Sundowns remain the only team still unbeaten in the entire campaign so far. Makubedi believes that the encounter at Loftus Stadium promises box.
It's going to be a very difficult game. They're a good side. We are also doing well in the league. And we have been working very, very hard. Both teams are on form. We are both in top 4. It's not going to be an easy game for us and them.
Elsewhere, Aston Villa boss Unai Emery has extended his contract with the club until 2027. This season, they sit fourth in the Premier League with Champions League qualification in their sights. They are 6 points clear of Tottenham Hotspur, who have 2 games in hand. In the meantime, UEFA is set to confirm nations will have 26-man squad for this year's European Championship in Germany. A meeting of the European governing body's National Competition Committee voted in favour of the change, which is set to be ratified by the Executive Committee later this week. Now, UEFA have had planned to revert back to 23-man squad after allowing the 3-man expansion for the Euro 2020 due to the impact of COVID-19. Expanded squad were also permitted at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar because it was played in the middle of the domestic season. In cricket, Sunil Narine says that the door is closed on his West Indies career after his sparkling IPL form prompted calls for him to come out of international retirement for their home T20 World Cup. The bowling all-rounder has starred at for Kolkata Knight Riders as an opening batsman with 286 runs, including a century and a half-ton in the current IPL. He has taken 9 wickets with his mystery spin and also stifled opposition's run flow with an economy of 7.10 in a high-scoring season. Then finally, in the business of sport, if you've ever wondered which football clubs you can buy shares in, well, sitting at the top is Manchester United. It's actually the largest publicly traded football club, and its shares are sitting on 297 rands per share. Then you can also buy shares from Juventus, despite them having all these money issues. It's still a big football brand, and a share there is 25 rand. And then Borussia Dortmund is sitting on 77 rands per share. If you didn't know, now you know.
I want to buy a share in Coventry City. But anyway, listen, here's a serious question for you, because you spoke about the Varsity Cup in rugby earlier on.
Yes.
So here's the thing. There's a strong Varsity Cup, Inter-Varsity Cup rugby in rugby, and there's a incredibly strong inter-school rugby school culture. So here's my question. How big is the football, inter-school football culture? How big is the football inter-rugby? Sorry, let me get that right. How big is the football inter-university culture?
I mean, there is varsity football. In terms of schools, slowly but surely coming up. Obviously, it's not as big as it was. I mean, now you know that Pito has now started this football schools program that he started, but it's not as big or on the level of rugby, because rugby, they take their development very serious.
But, I mean, that is a question directly targeted to SAFA, to say, like, that's within your control. Because I'm not even talking about football schools as in academies. I'm talking about inter-school, right? The fact that we, 30 years into democracy, and the leadership of football in this country that's hosted a World Cup, it was that important to them, and it hasn't filtered down in changing the face of our school football, is the best example why Bafana have not qualified for a World Cup since, 2002, I think it is, or 2006, because you don't count 2010. That's why we have a poor football structure at school level.
Absolutely. That's why Peter has been saying we need to start at the bottom. Development is always key. But that's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumeng Khapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
So interesting, we were talking about fuel earlier on, because we're going to move now to Paswani Mpatlele, who's a senior portfolio manager at Makwe Fund Managers, and I understand you're going to pick up on Sasol and wheat production updates. Go ahead.
Well, afternoon, Ashraf, and to all your listeners. Sasol, we're looking at Sasol. We're looking at their 9-month production and sales update. The guys at Sasol are looking at this update, Ashraf, which was they faced a number of challenges in both the energy and chemical business sectors, not forgetting the headwinds that were coming from a geopolitical sense, impacting their financial performance. And just looking into energy, the business it had benefited from the higher fuel prices that help improve their margins. Meanwhile, mining showed some improvement on a productivity standpoint, up 3% looking at that Secunda. But the 9 months compared to the 3 months compared to the previous period, it was down. And this is back to they had issues around equipment availability, disruption around, this has led to disruption around their output, which they failed to now meet the mid to higher end of their target. Meanwhile, the chemical sector saw a decline in the level of profitability as prices such as oil were down heavily, and demand in areas like China and Europe were also impacted, effectively impacting their revenue. But the total sales were up year to date, and that thanks to the like of America.
Right, and then you want to pick up on what else? Capitec, yeah?
Capitec this is the well-known bank in South Africa. It's the largest retail bank. It right now accommodates around 22 million people, 36% of the population. Their financials reflected an ability that they can, as a good management team, increase their customer base, diversify their revenue through the digital innovations they've been doing and having value-added services. And this has paid off because they've reported on their profits according to headline earnings per share up 16%, return on equity 26%. And this is all thanks to other contributors such as non-interest income, because they are fully banked clients and active clients have increasing the transactional volume. Net interest income was also high thanks to the higher interest rate environment. But the downside is that during such an interest rate environment, there also be some dark clouds over them, and that goes down to those loan books they have there. They've increased their credit loss ratio up to 10%. But outside that, the results are very pleasing.
All right, and let's get to local and global markets.
And to the global market, Ashraf, in recent times when we look at markets, there's still being a positive momentum we're seeing, and is well supported by the fact that investors are optimistic on the view of Q1 earnings, positive economic growth data that has come out from our trading partners such as the Eurozone. The private sector business activity was in expansion for the second month, better than expected, especially in the likes of Germany, and reflecting that they have moved away from those recessionary worries completely. Locally, we had some business cycle leading indicator that rebounded by 1.7% month on month, which was a positive. Let's not forget that overall we have weaker oil prices in the market, a weaker dollar at the back of the fact that the recent US report came out that their service and manufacturing business activity increased at a slower pace, bringing back those chats around interest rate cut expectation growing, especially when we look at the likes of the month of September. And overall, investors are now just taking a bit of risk into the market. We see overall the US market is up, Nasdaq up 1.5, S&P 500%, Dow is up 0.5. In Europe, the DAX is up 1.2, CAC 0.5, the FTSE is up marginally 0.1. Bringing it home locally, we see the JS is up 0.5, supported by those financials up 1.6, along with industrials. Meanwhile, our resource sector is down 2.2%. Looking at the commodity space quickly, we're looking at gold that has eased some of its losses, now at $2,323 at the back of that US economic report that shows that it's not growing as a faster pace. Platinum was down 1.8 at $913 an ounce, while oil was flat at $87.10. And we're moving quickly into the forex market. We're seeing a currency in the South African rand where it has shown some slight recovery. Rand is sitting around at 19.10, rand against the euro 20.45, and rand against the pound 23.79.
Okay, and that's it for today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll chat tomorrow. Paswani Impatlele with the Senior Portfolio Manager at Markware Fund Managers. Of course, we'll have another market update coming up in about just under an hour's time. So listen out for that. Thanks for that. Right. In fact, let's get to some calls. Lots of people want to comment on, besides issues of Zimbabwe, and we'll talk about Zimbabwe further on just now, about the issues of jobs. Magdalene from Bloemfontein has an opinion. Hi, Magdalene.
Hi, afternoon, Asha.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling in.
Okay. My point is that will it be possible for us as South Africans to can measure the unemployment rate in South Africa for the South Africans? Much as we are focusing on the youth, yes, because it is embarrassing. For the fact that previously it was well known that once you are from the university or the college, you have collected the skills which is needed to be provided within the communities, even within the government. So there was no way that you can short a job. But now, even a doctor, a physician is running short of a job. So how can we come to the point of measuring whether is it the South Africans who are lacking the jobs, or is it the whole African continent which has moved to South Africa, which is messed up in the whole of South Africa? So there's no way that we can measure the unemployment rate of the South Africans as long as we are still having a clocked in of the whole African country.
Well, I mean, there is official measurements, and then they do relate to South African citizens. As far as the whole of Africa living in South Africa, well, it will then mean the whole of Africa is rather barren, which is really not the case. Magdalene, thanks for that call. In fact, here's an interesting WhatsApp, and it says, Ashraf, have you been censored not to analyze the MK win on the logo matter? So my answer to you is, where were you yesterday? Because we did 1 take on it, 2 takes on it, 3 takes on it, 4 takes on it. So I'm disappointed you were not here yesterday. That's the first thing. The more important one that I think you need to take out of this one is this show, The National Pulse, reflects the national pulse in the moment. So when things happen yesterday, we cover it yesterday, in the moment, as it's happening, as your blood's boiling, whichever way you want to turn. So we did it. That's my answer to your question, which clearly means I have not been censored. In fact, you not listening denied yourself the opportunity of catching it. But I'll tell you what, there are podcasts, 4 different takes. Just go to the SAFM website, or you can Google it, but also check it out on our X platform. Check the Twitter account of SFM Radio. You'll find all those podcasts there, and you can listen to those 4 takes on the MK logo issue. We'll talk about, I think, another really important issue that we'll pick up in a moment. It's the issue of a functional economy and a functional state. And Tessa Dooms has her thoughts on that. We'll get to her after this.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
DA leader John Steenhuisen. What qualifies the DA to run the country?
Firstly, we do not tolerate corruption. And where the DA governs, life is better. And that is why millions of South Africans are moving to DA governments. We still have much more to do. But in the past year, the Western Cape created over 300,000 new jobs and is working every day to become load shedding free. We can bring this DA difference to the rest of South Africa, but only if you vote for the DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
In this week's episode of The Masked Singer South Africa, the mystery continues as we meet Ice Cream, Blue Crane, Cheetah, and Gold.
She's gonna go down in the history as the most difficult mask to figure out.
Who will be the panel of detectives and superfan audience's favorite? And who will be unmasked? Don't miss The Masked Singer South Africa this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on S3.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Right, Tessa Dooms is with us. She's a director of programs at the Rivonia Circle. And by the way, they put together some really important programs on, not who you should vote for, but why you should vote and why it's that important. So do follow them on their website, but also on their social media platforms. But Tessa is also a political analyst, and she's put together something really interesting in terms of her tweets yesterday that I thought, if I have a point, well, what's Tessa's point around this issue? So Tessa, good chatting to you, and thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you tweeted, and I still use the word tweet as opposed to X because it doesn't sound right with an X, right? About this connection between a connection or disconnection between a functional economy and a functional state. And I thought, I want to pick your brain on this. So you tell me, what are you trying to say?
Yeah, so oftentimes when we talk about the economy, we talk about it in isolation of government. So people will say we need the economy to grow, we need the economy to function, but we don't often think about the fact that the state is not only an economic role player by virtue of, the role it plays regulatory or the role it plays even as, a state-owned entity, but also the state provides the basis for the economy, like it provides the basis for society, the basis for family, etc. And so when we say we want the economy to thrive, we must consider the state and the government and the country in which that economy is running, and know that the state of that country will determine the health of that economy one way or the other. You need a functioning state before you can think about having a functioning economy.
And do I take it that's particularly important in the build-up to the election? And we are talking about a failing economy. Never mind, South Africa's been rated Africa's number one again. We're talking about a failing economy. There's evidence of multiple examples of a state failing. But therefore, in the build-up to the election, the issue of a state that is functional is even more critical, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it should influence our voting choices when we look at the ways in which politicians, independent candidates view the relationship between the state and the economy. So there are very many people who think that if you want the country to thrive, what you need to do is have a focus on growing the economy. For some people, that means that the state itself must be the role player that grows the economy, that ensures that businesses thrive, that ensures that jobs are created. For other people, they believe that they want to put people into government so that government can get out of the economy. And so there's a narrative that says we want to put people into government who will just leave the economy alone. And that's generally people who think of the economy as a free market. For example, think about the economy as self-regulating and the state needing to get out of the way so the economy can function. And I think for both of those views, whether you think that the state should lead and be very interventionist in the economy, or whether you believe that the economy should self-regulate, in either instance, you need a strong state. And one of the points that I make, particularly for people who are free marketers and this idea that the market will just regulate itself, the truth is that in every society in the world, including highly capitalist societies like the U.S., the state needs to create regulations to create the field of economic play. And so there is no such thing in real terms as a free economy that's free of constraints. So you need to ask yourself, what kind of policies and regulations will be put in place? Who will be putting those regulations in place and to what end? But more importantly, and this is why the view that I take of a more interventionist state, before you can have a market where everybody's playing and engaging economically, you actually need a stable environment, and you need to be able to create access and make it possible for people to participate. So that looks at a number of issues. Number one, can the state keep people alive and well? Can the state provide the basic essentials that we need as human beings to be alive and to be well? Because it doesn't matter that you have an economy that's open if you have people who are too sick and not able to participate. But on the second part of it, you also need economic infrastructure that enables people's participation. So things like roads, things like transportation, you need ports, you need all sorts of things that make it possible for people to interact, to transact, to create, all of those things. And so you need a state that can function to do those basic things right so that we all have a jumping point. And I'll make the point as simple as this. A young man was saying to me a few years ago that he was looking for employment, but he found himself homeless. And said, who will employ someone who doesn't even have a home? And that's why it's really important that we think about the entire ecosystem of our society as the launching pad for economic participation, and the state is central to that.
Well, that's a good point, because one of the things you say in your tweets is don't give up on government. So as you mentioned that, what then for you? So you do talk about this connection between state and the economy. What then is your perspective of the current ratio, if I can put it that way, between state and economy, and how do you see that shaping up going forward that will be the best for the majority of South Africans?
Sure. So a worrying trend for me and that's why I say don't opt out of government, is an opting out of government in a highly unequal society. So as we have gone through various stages about democracy, I think we've gotten to a point in the last 5 to 10 years where we've seen more and more private industry taking up very basic functions, right? So basic service functions. So increase in private education, increase in private healthcare. I think one of the things that startled me was when I realized there are more private security officers than police officers in South Africa.
That's incredible.
And there are now also fire stations that are becoming privatized. Things that are very, very core to our health and well-being are being privatized. And that's a result of two things, right? One is that the resources that have been going into the state have not been well used. And so people are saying, well, I'm putting resources into the state that should be providing some of these basic essentials for me to live, but I'm not getting those out. So what I'm going to do is look for alternatives. That's created markets for things like healthcare, education, even water and sanitation. Electricity now has become one of those things that's becoming privatized. The danger with that is twofold. One is that you are directing away resources from the state into the private sector, or you're doubling down resources for a growing part of the population, where people are paying the state to produce services, and then the state doesn't deliver on those services, so they have to pay somebody else to produce those services too. And those are for the people who can afford it.
Yeah.
For the people who cannot afford it, what you then do, because also the state has a rebate system, right, in our tax. So if you pay for your own medical aid, if you're paying for your own education, the state gives you that money back now in rebate with taxes. So you have less and less money available for the state to service the majority of people. And in a case where we have over 30% unemployment, that really leaves a lot of people vulnerable, and there's less incentive for the state to act right and do the things it needs to do, because the people with money are often the people with most power and the most power to speak back to the state. And so if they are not invested in the state for those things, the state has less incentive to act on the behalf of the majority.
Now, you also know that, when we look at many of these state-owned enterprises, starting from Ascom to SAA, all very, very topical right now. They can go down to issues around water and everything else. The default then answer to say, well, you see, that's what happens when government runs all these places. So this move towards creating privatization, as you've just given the examples of with security, is understandable. But you're saying, in fact, it's wrong, and you're suggesting it's, in broad speak, it's a myth that private institutions are better and more efficient. Tell me why you say so.
Yeah, so there's an idea that private is inherently better, and that government is inherently bad, inherently inefficient. And my view is that both private sector companies or NGOs and government as public are both run by South Africans. They're run by us, by people like us. And so if people like us can create efficient companies and efficient NGOs, why can we not create an efficient state? It's because the people who are in the state are not running it efficiently, are not creating an efficient state. We're not demanding an efficient state, and we're not voting for people who will create an efficient state. And we're not willing to be the people who will run an efficient state, even though we will run companies absolutely efficiently. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to government. And again, this is the not giving up on government part. We can't give up on something that is so central, not only to our economy, but central to our ability to live in a coherent society that works, in a society that responds. I was saying yesterday as well that the same people who are, who say you need less regulation from the state on the market are the same people who will tell you they want more policing from the state. They want more rules and regulations in terms of how society functions so that their economies can work. One of the things that I found quite disturbing in the last few months interacting with communities is the realization that people are struggling to open small businesses and run their businesses efficiently because of two factors. One is electricity and the other is crime.
Yeah.
And so the state has to intervene and regulate those two things. So business must also want us to regulate that. But that also means that the state can and should be regulating the way we relate to each other in the market. Either way, the state needs to be efficient, and we can make it so
if we choose to.
All right, we've got 30 seconds. We're on to news time. Here's the thing. You spoke about demanding an efficient state. Are we not demanding an efficient state? Do we, I talk about building a champion nation. You talking about getting things right. Others talk about different things. A, are we not demanding an efficient state? And B, in what is possibly going to be a coalition government, are we able, as a coalition government, able to deliver an efficient state? And you've got 30 seconds to answer that question.
My favorite thing about the state is that it's not only politicians who run it, it's bureaucrats as well. And the depoliticization of the state machinery on all levels is one of the things we must demand from politicians. Politicians provide oversight, but we need to get bureaucrats that are not there as proxy politicians, and I think we'll be a step ahead in the fight to have a better state.
Well, that's where we can leave it. Certainly got us thinking, and that's really the plan in understanding the national pulse, right? Tessa Dooms, feel free, by the way, to tweet out some further thoughts coming on the back of this conversation. I'll certainly, if you tag myself and SFM Radio, we will certainly share that too. Follow Tessa Dooms on Twitter as well. In fact, we've just tagged her right away now. Right, thanks for your time. Let's get to the news now. It's just gone 5 o'clock with Iba Chipa.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories at 5. Government struggles to meet targets to settle land claims, and Musk challenges the Australian government. Good afternoon. I'm Eva Chipa. Government says it's unlikely to meet its targets in settling land claims for the 2023-24 and the 2024-2025 financial years. It has attributed this to a reduction in budget allocation by National Treasury. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development says the Land Claims Commission has already started revising its annual targets. In a written parliamentary reply, Minister Tokoti Diza revealed that they have slashed annual performance plan targets from 355 to 319 for the current financial year. The FF Plus Member of Parliament, Tamrin Briet, has expressed concern.
The decline in the budget of the department, and especially the decrease of targets of the department, is extremely worrying. All this proves is that the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development have failed its people. 90% of all land reform projects have failed, and the pre-1998 land claims are still not settled. This decline in budget will only exacerbate this fact and increase the amount of people living without title deeds.
The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says the employee shared ownership programs have seen a significant increase in the number of jobs these schemes have contributed to the economy. Patel was speaking at the inaugural Worker Shared Ownership Conference in Sandton, Johannesburg today. The minister says since 2019, the Worker Shared Ownership program has been gaining momentum to ensure economic growth that will see less poverty and inequality in the country.
To address inequality in ways that also enhance growth and social cohesion. One part of this program is the initiative to foster more meaningful worker ownership and participation in the economy. Today, workers throughout South Africa have the opportunity to become owners in the companies they serve, allowing them to make significant contributions to those companies' successes.
IEC Chairperson Mosotho Moepya has sent out a stern warning against anyone who may incite violence in the upcoming elections. Speaking at the Gauteng Province IEC Code of Conduct signing ceremony in Kempton Park today, he says there will be consequences for those who violate the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct commits political parties to free political activity where contestants are able to canvass support without fear or hindrance. He further elaborates.
Certain behaviors such as inciting violence, intimidation, and spreading false information or abusing positions of power are strictly prohibited in terms of this code. We do need to take action and do so swiftly when this code is violated.
In other news, the only independent candidate in the Free State who stands to contest the upcoming general elections say his newly formed political journey hasn't been smooth sailing. Ramotsabodi Singh is contesting for a seat in the provincial legislature as an independent candidate. He says since he started campaigning, he has been receiving random phone calls from strangers who are questioning his motive. Singh explains he decided to take a bold move of contesting in these upcoming elections after he started questioning his dilapidating surroundings. And lastly, looking further afield, a fierce row has erupted between Elon Musk and the Australian government over access to footage that shows a stabbing incident in a church in Sydney last week. An Australian court has ordered Musk's social media platform X to take down the video around the world, not just in Australia. However, Musk is challenging the ruling. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese had this response.
We'll do what's necessary to take on this arrogant billionaire who thinks he's above the law, but also above common decency. The idea that someone would go to court for the right to put up violent content on a platform shows how out of touch Mr. Musk is.
Recapping the top story at 5, government says it's unlikely to meet its targets in settling land claims for the 2023-24 and the 2024-2025 financial years. It has attributed this to a reduction in budget allocation by the National Treasury. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, good afternoon. I'm Eva Chipa.
European Rights Court to examine Semenya's appeal on the 15th of May, and Djokovic pulls out of Madrid Open. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Sunninghill has a stationary vehicle after a Vernier Road exit. The N3 northbound in Bedfordview has a stationary truck that's on the link to the N12 east at Gululi's interchange. Bayers Nordia Drive westbound in Rand Park Ridge is slow moving towards Malope Road. In Pretoria, Dustpoort Tunnel queuing at the tunnel, and Steve Biko Street northbound is queuing at Frederica Street. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Ashburton, an earlier stationary truck at Linfield Park has been cleared, causing delays. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck reported after Peter Brown Drive exit, and the M19 westbound in Westville is queuing towards Dunkel Road exit. In the Eastern Cape on the R396, protest action reported between Tsolo and Maclear, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. AZ Berman Drive in both directions in Mitchell's Plain is queuing south of the R300, and the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Let me just emphasize what I had said before. I mean, I've been hosting the show now for just over 3 weeks, and we've got a great team. And you know, we call the show the National Pulse, and that's really what we want to do, to reflect what is the National Pulse right now. What is the country feeling now? The state, business, the different organs, the NGOs, other institutions, and you, the citizens, what do we all feel right now at any moment in time? And in doing that, one of the factors that we've factored in to the audience is to be as quick as we can with the big stories, and because that will really get your pulses racing. And that's what we're doing, okay? And that's what we're striving to do every single day. And it's not me, it's an entire team, a whole production team. As you know, the presenter is only the captain, but the producers are the coaches. So if you can get that combination right. Now, with that in mind, there are a whole range of WhatsApp voice notes, and I need to play them. Not right now, we'll do that just now. But I must stay with the issue of Zimbabwe, but let me also just tell you as well that later on in the conversation, as part of our accent and focus on matters around innovation, we will pick up on another story around innovation that you would not want to miss. So let me leave it at that, because, well, in fact, he talks about a certain brand that's number one. We'll talk about that just now. So let's stay with Zimbabwe. So you know that earlier on, we chatted to Lennon Indebele, the head of News 24's Africa desk, and he said certain things around the goings around of the new Zimbabwean currency. We'll connect about that issue right after this.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Formula One correspondent, Prince Ndiweni. Max Verstappen getting back to winning ways in the last Grand Prix after the disappointment of Melbourne for him. The other drivers are saying that he's going to run away with it.
There is something to grab onto there because remember, we haven't seen significant upgrades come to these cars. We're still within that threshold of the first 6 or 7 races of the season, and this is that window where teams generally try and push it towards the end of that 6 or 7 race period to actually introduce significant upgrade. And if you've seen the kind of performance Red Bull able to pull out for that significant upgrade, it kind of tells you that it's not a great omen for those competitors.
Top Sport on SAFM. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Right, we will connect to the Zimbabwe story in a moment. In fact, we're doing so anyway. Before I get to that, that question we had from us, hi Ashraf, have you been censored not to analyse the MK party win on the logo matter? Remember I mentioned that we had 4 takes on the issue yesterday. Well, I got a nice apology. Apologies, Ashraf, I couldn't listen yesterday. Apology accepted. Now, please listen every single day so you don't miss out on everything we do here on the National Pulse. Okay, let's get to some of the callers in the meantime. Anthony has a comment on Zimbabwe. Hi, Anthony. Anthony, hi. In fact, we have just lost Anthony for the moment. Let's play some voice notes if we can here. There's a couple of more. There's been another one on the issue of
Good evening,
the currency.
and SAFM listeners. This is Lionel from Woodbank once again. Well, what would be the way forward for Zimbabwe? My opinion would be they need to liberalize the foreign exchange market. Politicians are gaining from buying cheap US dollars in the Reserve Bank and selling them at a higher price in the informal economy, gaining more zig and buying more US dollars. So the central bank needs to liberalize the foreign exchange market. That's the way forward. Thanks. This is Lionel from Woodbank again. Thanks. Amen.
The central bank needs to liberalize the market, sir. Okay? I'm sure others may have a different opinion on that. Let's get another thought. In fact, let's get to the issues of unemployment, right? A big issue in South Africa, as we discussed earlier on. Right, here it is.
Hi, Sheila here from Rosebank. There is a simple answer to youth unemployment, and it's the universal basic income. We need to get the cash out of the hands of the government and into the hands of people. If every single person got a basic income grant, whether they're working or not, they would have enough to eat, they would have enough to build up their wealth slowly.
Okay, I hear you. Are you saying that those that are eligible for the basic income grant do not have it? And if so, what percentage of people? And whereas it's great to get them to receive that basic income grant, what you really want ideally is to have job creation, isn't it? Because the income grant depends on the state providing it, which is important because we cannot leave them destitute. But on the other hand, ultimately what you want is serious, meaningful growth and employment in large numbers. Sheila, love it if you can help us with that answer too, because I certainly want to know. Well, naturally, the issue of jobs is part of getting the National Pulse racing. Here's another.
Hi, Ashraf. Willie here in Kuma. Ashraf, we South Africans struggle to get jobs here in South Africa. The foreign nationals also come into the country to come and look for jobs. And then they would be hired, over the South Africans because of the so-called cheap labor. you see. So the hospitality companies and the truck companies are hiring the foreign nationals over South Africans. It can't work like that, Ashraf. Charity begins at home, Ashraf. Thank you.
Okay, that's another. Thank you for that one. Right, let me do this. I'm going to play one last one, and hopefully we'll connect to the Zimbabwe issue in a moment. And again, it just shows you if there's one thing in the country we must sort out, it has got to be unemployment.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Great show once again. Unemployment, I think, it really gets the pulse of the nation going. But I worry, man, about analysis and this type of research being done by the youth capital, It doesn't get away from this idea that there is a skills shortage in South Africa. And it latches on this notion of fourth IR, But I'd like to know, because I know that this economy has been in stagnation since the 1970s. Unemployment rate has been growing since the 1970s. And I wonder, what are the macroeconomic policy, the conservative macroeconomic policy, what does it do in terms of restricting the number of jobs that can be creating? What is the freezing of posts which comes with austerity measures do to the unemployment rate? It hasn't spoken at all about austerity or the problems of neoliberalism.
Understandably so, but also remember, time is the big constraint even on a show like this. We don't have Crystal Duncan here for an hour, and we've got for 10 minutes, and there's a lot more they've said, but maybe go to their website and you'll find out more about what they think about a range of issues. Right, we have had a problem connecting with our guest in Zimbabwe, which is a pity because we really wanted to get a good analysis of the state of the Zimbabwean economy with Vince Musewe. We hopefully should connect with Vince hopefully pretty shortly, okay? But in the meantime, I did touch on the issue of innovation, right? And our focus on innovation as a critical driver, I think, of the economy, and therefore we want to up the issues around innovation. So let's do this. We will pick up on that issue in a moment.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.6 FM in Palabora. Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, innovation, marketing, that's some of the issues we must focus on here. So we're going to speak to two different guests because of an interest to take on this issue. Now, the first guest is Louisa Mazinta, the MMS Smarties Jury Chair in the MMS or the MMA South Africa Smarties Awards, and they were held just recently, and they named their overall brand of the year, which is very interesting because it's Pap Stores, I understand. Okay, so let's get two takes on this issue. Firstly, with Louisa Mazinta. Louisa, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, it's great to chat to you too.
Much appreciated. I want to see if we've actually got the second guest also on the line, as we should, Sarah Utemark, the country director of MMA SA as well. Sarah, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. Looking forward to chatting.
Much appreciated. Louisa, let's start with you. First of all, in terms of the Smarties, right, what are the awards? And of course, you come up with some big winners, so tell me about them.
Absolutely. So the Smarties is an annual award which looks at some of the top marketing campaigns in the country, and it actually extends into sub-Saharan Africa. So brands and agencies from all over submit their campaigns to the Smarties, and what's quite interesting about it is it's an award that focuses very much on business impact. So yes, we look at strategy, we look at execution and implementation of the campaigns, we look at creative, but we weight our judging quite highly on results, on the actual impact that marketing campaigns have on the bottom line of businesses.
Would that be similar to what was called the Apex Awards, and I don't think it exists any longer, right?
Yes, that's correct. They do exist, yes.
So how then is the measurement, again, if you're looking at the business impact of a campaign, for example, so often all of us, we listen on the radio, we'll watch on TV, we see a really cute, really fancy campaign that certainly gets our emotions, and we love it, but you want to know how that drives the bottom line, isn't it? Do I take that as correct?
Yes, we do. And, it's always really interesting when you look at of a business because you have financial objectives, but you also have long-term brand building and a resonance with your audience because you want them to remain loyal to you over the long term and to keep on coming back and engaging with you and transacting with you. So a company will always define their objectives up front, then design a strategy, a marketing strategy around how they are going to best achieve those objectives, execute that campaign, and then measure the results based on the objectives that they set in the first place.
And how valuable or invaluable is this, to industry experts in terms of the information and certainly to the brands themselves?
Oh, it's incredibly valuable. You can only get what you measure. So essentially what marketers are realizing more and more is that as professionals, we sit sort of at this intersection of art and science. Yes, a lot of what we do is about speaking to emotions, to speaking to the core heart of what consumers believe, what they really want and need. But at the end of the day, businesses are really operate in order to make a return on investment for their shareholders. So they need to be able to measure the impact of everything that they do out in the marketplace.
Now, I understand that there are two significant awards amongst maybe the many that has been announced or delivered by the Smarties. Sarah Utermark, you're going to run through them, right?
Yes, so Smarties, we actually established Smarties back in 2003, so we've just finished our 10th year anniversary, so we had a sort of a milestone back in last month, so it was a great achievement. But Smarties is really, as Louisa mentioned, focusing very much on sort of marketing impact, impact media, but we're seeing a lot more now with the emerging tech coming through, especially sort of around AI, blockchain, NFTs. So we're really sort of honing in on those campaigns that are tapping into some really exciting tech. But what we saw this year, which I think was probably the most encouraging, is where you see small agencies, small businesses coming out of South Africa that really can compete with some of the global agencies. And these are sort of recognized by some of our international judges that were previously from South Africa that have left to take up positions overseas. And they're judging not only the South African entries, but they've also been exposed to some of the global entries they've seen. And it's really encouraging to know that we've got some fantastic skills and tech coming out of South Africa that competes at that global level.
Well, I mean, I know, and it's been discussed on many platforms before, that South Africans generally underestimate the South African level of innovation, particularly among South African youth, Sarah. I mean, do you agree with that? That the innovative youth are largely underappreciated in terms of their full value, and I know that that's a scope beyond just marketing and branding, right?
Totally. I think, and there's such a strong entrepreneurship that comes out of South Africa, and the skill that we develop from such a sort of young age that people leave and people, depart for overseas to take up, greater employment, and they might get paid more and it's in dollars but it's a shame that we lose so many in their sort of early 20s. But if we can sort of retain that skill, then we can see some fantastic work coming out. But it is encouraging. We do have some great skill sets in South Africa, and one of the jobs for certainly with the MMA is to really sort of build capabilities within businesses, small and large, within the marketing department, so we can actually sort of focus on achieving some great results.
Okay, let's end then with the winners. Louisa, perhaps you want to run through those two important winners and why they were judged so, yeah.
Absolutely. So we actually have three big sort of award-wide winners.
Okay.
The first being the Agency of the Year, which was won this year by Yonder Media. Unbelievably innovative agency. They work in sort of cutting-edge technology, Web3, blockchain work. They work with NFTs. It's really is amazing the impact that they're seeing and the results that they're delivering to customers. The second winner, which was really, really exciting for us, is the retailer Pep. Now, Pep has been around, as you know, for many, many years, and it's always been a little bit of an old-fashioned kind of brand, but over the last number of years, it really, really has started to make inroads into modernizing their brand, modernizing the communication channels they use, and establishing really authentic and genuine connections with their customers through social and digital channels, and becoming much more culturally relevant in the local market, so that they bridge those old gaps that always used to exist between brands and their communities in a really innovative and inspiring way. And the campaigns that Pep submitted this year for the Smarties all performed exceptionally well, and it just demonstrates the commitment of the brand to understand their market and to deliver really on what they
I'm going to look out for it with renewed interest, and I'm going to check out that hashtag PepFinds and maybe see what happens when I get to a Pep store. But I'll rely on you, in fact, to tag us maybe with some of the campaigns and just tag SAFM Radio and myself. I want to see what happens. You say quickly there's a third award. What is that for?
Yes, this was the sort of an overall winner that really stood out for us. This is, as Sarah was saying, it's actually surprisingly a small agency and a small business that used really innovative technology and in a really unique way to really outperform some of the top brands who submitted. And Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit?
Okay, we got 30 seconds. You can go ahead. 30 seconds, right? Yeah.
It's it was a company called Flow Communications, and they used AI as a trigger message for car spa and car washing loyalty. So it was basically able to pick up recognition on number plates that link back to the database to identify the customers and how loyal they are, how regular they've been attending, and they're able to reward instantly and communicate. And it was fantastic technology. And as I said, an international judge pinpointed them as someone that had achieved something that some of the global agencies had yet to be able to achieve. So it was so good, and it was so heartwarming to see that.
Well, now we know. Flow Communications and certainly PAP as well. Certainly take a closer look at them. Thank you for your time. We have a better insight into the Smarties once again. Thanks for your time, Louisa Mazinter and Sarah Utermark. So there you are. Make a note of these achieving brands in our country.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, we've had an issue with that Zimbabwe story, and we need to see if we can really cover it, because we've had some connection issues around it, so my apologies for that. But there are voice notes that I want you to hear, right? And let me just see if in fact, let's connect it on the other side. If we can connect the voice notes, and I'll pick out some of the text as well.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Quite a sad story coming out of Zimbabwe there, but not surprising at all, given that government there. The fact that the ordinary people in Zimbabwe, and worse and strangely still, the government itself in its offices is rejecting that ZIG, just proves that no one, not even its own employees, trusts this government, which, if truth be told, wasn't really popularly voted into office. We all know what happened there in the last elections. Thanks, Farai.
Farai, right. There's another issue around, I'll tell you what, it just shows you unemployment. Is unemployment like the biggest election issue? Is it? Because I don't see it, but it's certainly the biggest issue that gets Our national pulse is racing, right? Here's another.
Hi, Ashraf. It's Nondu from KZN. What's on my mind is the number of social workers who are sitting at home unemployed. We have social workers who graduated as far back as 2016 who are currently without employment. Then you hear in the news how doctors go on the road, and after that, posts are made available. There are now currently talks about educator posts which need to be filled, but there is no word from the Department of Social Development speaking about the placement of social workers who have not yet received employment from as far back as 2016. So I would like, if possible, to get the Department of Social Development to speak around that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that input. And maybe we made a note of that one. Just to end with, for now, there's a WhatsApp text message. Hi, Ashraf, that's our topic. She's quite correct. Our ANC-led government and our South African business leaders are so accustomed to thinking about South Africa as individual slice or siloed, I think it is siloed, yeah. They continue to struggle to grasp the basics, which is systems thinking philosophy. Systems thinking approach views a country as a whole comprised of many parts, yet at the same time is more than the sum of its parts. They are missing the interconnectedness. Well, I'll tell you what, if anybody gets the interconnectedness right, well, they should be leading our country. You think about that. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30. Here's Eva Chipa.
Thanks, Ashraf. In your news making headlines for this hour, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Bladen Nzimande, says he is pleased that the Sector Education and Training Authority, CETAS, has built strong relationships with TVET colleges to try and combat the challenge of unemployment in the country. Who's speaking during the CETA Skills Summit in Boksburg on Gauteng's East Rand. In other news, government says it's unlikely to meet its target in settling land claims for the 2023-24 and 2024-25 financial years. It has attributed this to a reduction in budget allocation by National Treasury. And lastly, 200 days into the war in Gaza, the Israeli military has carried out some of the heaviest shelling in weeks. There has also been an increase in hostile exchanges between Hezbollah militants in Lebanon and Israel. I'll be back at 6 with more news. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 has full closure of the highway between Nelma Pierce Drive and Olifantsfontein Road on Saturday from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. and Sunday from 6 a.m. until 12 noon. In Midrand, the N1 southbound has a crash after Allendale Road exit, and the N1 southbound has a crash near New Road exit. All lanes are open. In Pretoria, Trans-Oranje Road is queuing at Vermhagen Street. Steve Biko Street northbound is queuing at Frederica Street. The N1 northbound has a crash after the N4 Witbank Highway. The N14 northbound has delays towards the R101 interchange, and Mabopane Highway northbound has a crash reported at Block XX. In KZN, the N3 westbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 eastbound in Ashburton has a stationary truck at Linfield Park. All lanes are open. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg, earlier roadworks between Townhill and Hilton have been lifted, but traffic is still slow moving. The R620 is closed in the Central Market area due to storm damage. The M19 westbound in Westville is queuing towards Dunkel Road exit, and the R103 northbound has heavy traffic between Pietermaritzburg and Hilton. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit. The N7 checks Harville Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker. The R300 southbound is queuing towards Stock Road exit. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road, and the N2 outbound is slow moving towards Muway exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkapele.
All right, Tumi, big stories?
Well, the European Court of Human Rights has confirmed that it will examine the appeal of double Olympic champion Caster Semenya against regulations requiring female athletes with high testosterone levels to take medication on the 15th of May. The 33-year-old won a long legal battle last July against Switzerland at the ECHR, which ruled she was the victim of discrimination from the Lausanne-based Court of Arbitration for Sport. But Swiss authorities have taken the matter to the ECHR's Grand Chamber, whose rulings are binding, with hearings now slated to start on the 15th of May. And Semenya has admitted that her career is basically over, and now she is more focused on being an advocate for young athletes facing similar challenges. In netball, Sport Proteas assistant coach Zanele Mdodana says in-depth preparation will be key ahead of the Test series against Malawi in August. Mdodana says that they look forward to making a mark together with head coach Jenny van Dijk as they take on the first big task as a pair.
Well, it's going to be our first task as a coaching pair, Jenny and myself, to see how we can get the team ready and prepared for that Malawi Test series. It's going to be important for us to, get to what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of put across our plan, our structures, our systems, because we are new with this group, and it's going to be interesting to see how they adapt and buy in, to what we want to see, or what the style of netball that we want them to play. And Malawi is always a slippery one for us. We certainly don't take them for granted. We respect them, and we'll have to prepare to the best of our ability as soon as everybody is back in the country to make sure that our team is well oiled to face Malawi. It's always a tightly contested.
Then in football, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag has described the external criticism his side received for their display on Sunday as embarrassing. This is ahead of tomorrow's Premier League clash with the bottom side Sheffield United at Old Trafford. Ten Hag says that all that matters in the sport is the final score, before reminding journalists of his record in cup competitions as a manager. United are 7th in the league standings with 50 points, 16 behind 4th placed Aston Villa with 6 games to go. Sheffield United on the other side are fighting relegation and sitting bottom, having won just 3 of the 33 matches.
And one was made the question, is it embarrassing? No, the reactions from you was embarrassed.
Why do you say that?
Why, it is. The comments in football, top football is about results. And we made it to the final. And we deserved it, not only by this game, but also the other games. And we lost. And then in 20-minute control, also had bad luck, 3-2, 3-3. We are very lucky in the end, clear. With penalties was very good. And we made it to the final. And that is a huge achievement. Twice in 2 years is magnificent. For me as a manager, 4 cup finals in 4 years. And so the comments are a disgrace.
Okay. My comments? Mm-hmm. When a coach speaks like that, and he talks about the media's analysis of him being embarrassing when they let go of 3 in the lead, that is the beginning of the end of a coach.
Literally, because
seriously.
I wanted to say that he's partially right. The results do matter. However, surely as a manager, you want to be focused on how the team is performing, how they win games, because then, how are we okay with the fact that Manchester United played the way that they played?
Well, if results do matter, and they're playing in a final, they haven't yet won the final.
Yeah.
They were in the final last year, they didn't win that final either. They won the League Cup. And if results truly matter, the ultimate result is to win the league. And they're currently lucky to be around number 7. So results do matter, boss, which means you could be in serious trouble.
They're definitely going to be in serious trouble against Manchester City. In tennis, world number 1 Novak Djokovic has pulled out of the Madrid Open to give himself enough time to prepare for the Roland Garros. Now, Djokovic is yet to win a title this season and has only played in 4 tournaments this year, having decided to lighten his load. Then finally, today marks World Book Day, and there's incredible sportswomen who tell their stories to inspire others, one being Caster Semenya with her book The Race to Be Myself, and then Thembi Kgatlana with the book Girls Don't Do That, and that's a book specifically for 6 to 10-year-olds who want to get into football. Then last but not least, Magic, Desiree Ellis from Salt River to the 2023 World Cup. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapel Mudimugyo.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's get on to other issues. In fact, the Zimbabwe story, we will cover that. We're going to talk about that pretty shortly, so listen out for that in terms of the broader issue, not just of currency and the new Zimbabwean currency, but in terms of the overall Zimbabwean economy. We will speak about that pretty shortly. To get us there, however, let's do what we normally do around this time as we talk about the markets every single day. And in this case here, we're talking about the Money Web Market Update, brought to you by Jimmy. How as always, Jimmy, you there?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon, Dumi. Good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you.
I'm here indeed.
Yeah, go ahead. Big stories now and later.
Yes, there's a couple of big stories for today's show and some stories that we are following up on as well. But for today's show, we're taking a look at Capitec results. I've got a conversation with the Capitec CEO, Harry Fourie, around the company's performance. They did really well in the last financial year. We're going to reflect on that and just see what the bank has in store going forward. Then we've got a conversation with Kearney. They released a report suggesting that South Africa is still attractive to foreign direct investment, according to an index report that showed South Africa moving up in terms of an attractiveness of emerging market countries. We're going to dig into that. We're going to unpack that report and try and make sense of it. And then we've got a conversation with EduVos around the educational offering that they are bringing to the market that is fit for purpose in terms of what we know in the changes that we're seeing happen in terms of the global environment. We're seeing people focusing more on things like AI and robotics and starting to educate themselves in new areas of learning. And EduVos is an institution in South Africa that offers higher education in those areas as well. And then because today is Tuesday, we have our Agri Tuesday feature. We're taking a look at the impact of the recent El Nino conditions. There is an agricultural report that was put together by a couple of really intelligent economists and agricultural specialists around the phenomenons or the circumstances that we've seen lately that have resulted in smaller harvests, lower dam capacities, warmer temperatures and the like, and the impact that those conditions have had on the agricultural space in terms of production and harvest yields in these times. So we're going to dig into that report as well, try and unpack that and make sense of what's happening there. But before we do that, the markets have had an interesting day. The resource counters, again, not having a good day, whereas the other sectors have had a slightly better performance. And Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on those markets for us throughout the day. He joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been moving the markets throughout the day. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. The Rand still struggling along, and another red day for resources.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Hello to you and to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, but I would say overall and around the world, it was a green day on the financial markets, because the Dow Jones now 0.6% stronger, the S&P 500 is trading 1.1% up, and the Nasdaq about 1.6% stronger, with European stocks also finishing well into the green, with the DAX gaining 1.5%, the CAC 40.8% up, and the FTSE 100 in London gaining 0.3% today. And then the JSE's All-Share Index gained 0.6% and finished at a higher level of 74,011 points. The Industrial Index was 1.7% up, the Financial Index 1.8% stronger. Like you mentioned, those resources, the Resources Index finished the day 2.1% weaker. But it was another great day for Naspers and Prosus. Naspers finished the day 4.9% stronger, almost 5% up. Prosus 4.2% stronger. Richmond as well as First Rand, they each gained 1.4% today. And British American Tobacco finished the day 1.1% stronger. But Goldfields lost 1.1%. Glencore as well as Anglo finished the day 1.6% weaker. But other companies that lost a lot more than that was Sasol, Amplats, ARM, Thungela. Let's start with Sasol. Sasol lost 11% today. It fell by 10.9%. Amplats lost 6%. ARM finished 5% weaker. Thungela and Sibanye-Stillwater each 4.5% down. Exxaro and Kumba 3% down. And Implats and Telkom finished today 2.5% weaker. Back to some positive news. Capitec had a great day, 7.8% stronger, followed by Remgro, which finished 3% up, and Investec and Quilter each gained 2.5% today. On the commodities market, the price of gold currently $2,320 an ounce, silver $27.15, platinum trading at $915, and palladium at $1,020. The price of Brent crude is $87.45 a barrel. If we have a look at the exchange rate, you're going to pay 19 Rand and 13 cents for a US dollar, 23 Rand 79 for a pound, 20 Rand and 46 cents for a euro, and 12 Rand 39 for an Australian dollar. Bitcoin still trading at $66,500, and that is 1.3 million Rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Certainly some markets or some stocks having a better performance than others. Speaking of things that are not having such a good day, I know certain individuals might not be having a good day following the latest gazette that the South African Reserve Bank put out confirming a seizure of the 60 million Rand that we had been following up on. I've put out a post on X around that. This, of course, relates to the former girlfriend of the late Marcus Jooste and the 60 million Rand that was moved from Steinhoff into her personal accounts. That update is up on X, and anyone that wants to go check it out can check it out. But we'll be back just after 6 with more news and more developments. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. I tell you what, one thing that I know about Capitec, if I know nothing about anything else, is that when you walk past that bank with all the other banks surrounding it, the bank with the longest queue is Capitec. Thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, you can certainly catch other economic issues coming up after 6 o'clock. Right? I tell you what, let's now move on to, by the way, there's an issue around the licensing of the fuel issue, right, that I want to read. What I understand, says this listener, is that there are essentially four parties: the objector, controller, minister, and the court. The objector can't just be any person, but there is wide public interest for objection. The controller decides on licenses, appeals on licenses issued by the controller are lodged with the minister. The court then interdicts the legal decisions, okay? And there's more, and I can't read more, but I think I get the point that you're making. Right, let's move on now to the issue around Zimbabwe. So earlier on, we spoke to Lennon Ndebele, but before I tell you what he said, let me then bring in an economist from Zimbabwe, Vince Museve, who's a Zimbabwean economist who also advises clients on socio-economic issues, not just in Zimbabwe, but in other African countries. So, Vince, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining the National Pulse.
Okay, good evening there, and good evening to all your listeners, eh?
Good evening indeed. Right. Now, earlier on, Vince, we spoke to Lennon Ndebele, who's the head of News 24, the Africa desk, and we spoke about the introduction of the ZiG currency and allegations, and there are allegations of, there's been circulating on social media of police officers beating up vendors, street vendors, for not accepting the news currency. Certainly, Lennon could not verify whether that was the case, but he had this to say.
Well, people must know that first things first, the ZiG is not yet there in physical form. It's at the moment electronic money. So you swipe or you use something called EcoCash. It's something like an e-wallet of sorts, but it's electronic money basically. So vendors are not taking electronic money because they prefer the US dollar, the hard currency, the US dollar, which has more value than this phantom money, so to speak of, which will have notes maybe next week.
Okay, that's what he said. Let's get Vince Musewe's thoughts. Vince, thank you for joining us. So firstly, do you want to comment on that soundbite if you can?
Yeah, well, you know what, it would be pity because you cannot police confidence. I've always said this. In any economy, it is the market that speaks and not the politicians. And when there's a disconnect between the politician's desire and what the market desires, you then get these issues arising. And that is exactly where we are in Zimbabwe. Let me give you a bit of background. The fundamental issue is that Zimbabweans have been burnt. They were burnt in 2008 with hyperinflation, and they've recently been burned with the bond note, which they had confidence in when it was launched. It was allegedly backed with gold, and everything was fine until it got to $1 to 50,000, and the government had to move to make sure that the situation does not get worse. So you have a market that has lost confidence, a market that is saying, listen, every time we do this, we lose out. We lose out on value, we lose out on transactions and the way things are done, and it's not fair. It is not fair. And remember, 90% of Zimbabwe transactions on a day-to-day basis are in US dollar anyway. The informal sector has been trading on US dollar. So the idea to bring on the ZiG was, one, to close the tap on the bond that was on the Zimbabwe bond that was really deteriorating in value. But it hasn't been done properly. Because when you have to get the police in to get people to accept your currency, you've got a serious problem. And the problem is that there is no confidence that if I go to Zimbabwe today and change my US dollar and get a ZiG, I can then be able to preserve value. Because remember, this ZiG was launched about on the 5th of this month at 13, and now I hear electronically it's about 20, and it's going to get worse. Nothing is going to change that because the sentiment of the market has not been addressed. And what we've mainly done is to basically put on another currency without a fundamental rethink of the system that is behind the currency management. So nothing has changed. And if you are going to get different results, you have to change the system. You don't change labels. Because the system will always give you the results that is designed to give you. And that is where we're at with regard to ZiG.
Okay, understood. Well, that's interesting. So two things. When the new currency was launched, right, in terms of public perception and public acceptance of the currency, in the light of the lack of confidence that you spoke about earlier, how was the new currency received?
Well, there's absolutely despondency. There's expectations that it's the same thing. I mean, I was listening to some voice notes on social media. People are saying, listen, we've been there. We were there in 2008. We lost money. We are now there again. And we can't trust you until, number one, you tell us that all government ministers are being paid in ZiG. You tell us that you are, as a government, now accept ZiG as a mode of payment for taxes, for fuel. Until you do that, you are not accepting your own currency. But you expect us as the market to accept it. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Has there been, and we've heard these stories and these are allegations that the police had to enforce the use of the ZiG. Is that the case? Has there been this report or reports today that suggested that some of the police officers had beaten up some of the vendors who had refused to take the new ZiG currency? Is that true?
I haven't seen that at all. What I know, what has been reported was that some money changers were arrested. I think 65 money changers were arrested over the weekend, and they were going to court today to apply for bail. That's all I know. Regarding what you're telling me now, I really haven't confirmed.
All right.
anything.
Thanks for clearing that up, because we have not received confirmation and we've asked the questions. We don't actually know the answer ourselves. But you're saying that the money changers were arrested. Were they arrested for engaging in illegal activities, or was their arrest in any way to do with the ZiG currency?
Well, you see, money changing in the street has always been illegal. It's never been legalized. So it's something that happened informally. Because what you want to do, you want people to go to the bank when they want to change money. You want people to transact with the banks. But the people are not confident with the banks. And they get a better rate in the street. So the market goes to the street to change money as opposed to go to the bank. Right? So by actually dealing with money changers, you are looking at the symptomatic issue. Because let me tell you, those money changers are representing the people with the real money. They're just runners, right? Who are basically being sent to do ABC, they do and they get paid. They are not the owners of the money that is being transacted. So arresting them is a temporary kind of reaction, because the next day you just get new money changes. There's so much unemployment. Do you see what I'm saying? So it really is a waste of time to try and say, listen, we arrest the money changers, because they are symptomatic. They are mainly middlemen. What we have failed to address is, number one, to agree on the source. Who is funding the money changes? Right? And then we go to there. And I know deep down that if we go there, we know where this will end. And therefore, one doesn't actually want to upset that cart. You'd rather go and deal with the money changers than actually deal with the people who are giving the money changers the money to change.
That's a good point. Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. In fact, as we wrap up on this issue, I thought there's an interesting note that I want to just read. It comes from ZW News, and it says that and this is from 20 hours ago, right? The Vice President, Constantino Chiwenga, has issued a stern warning against money changers, threatening them with violence. Addressing a gathering in Harare East this afternoon, according to the report, Chiwenga said money changers should stop it or else risk being rendered crippled. The buying and selling of zig on black market is a criminal offence similar to selling of gold illegally, according to the Vice President. Okay, that's that story, and you may have your own opinions on that. If you do have a comment, even now you can text me. Can't play your voice notes now, too late, but text to 0614104107, or otherwise even better, just use the hashtag The National Pulse, and you can tweet us on the X platform, SFM Radio, and tag me, Ashraf Garda. Okay, let's then wrap up with an issue that is in many ways is linked to Freedom Day that's coming up on Saturday, right? There's an upcoming Human Rights and Freedom Day youth celebration that is due to take place at Kyalami that we think you need to know more about, and certainly I need to know more about it. So let's find out with Olafemi Katani from the Queeneth Indaba Foundation. Olafemi, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining the National Pulse. Olafemi, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse, right?
Thank you so much.
Okay, tell us about your event, which ties in the importance of Freedom Day and South Africa's youth.
So tomorrow's event is actually kicking off tomorrow with the Youth Day Fest. So we're just going to have something like a panel discussion and open discussion with the youth and opportunities available. So we only have 500 packs that are going for free for the youth for the entire event. So the scope of the event is it starts from tomorrow, where we have the panel discussion in Kyalami. On the Thursday, it's going to be the walk in Vilagazi Street. On Friday, we have master classes for small business and the big festival on Saturday.
So who should attend and how should they attend?
Anyone. I don't believe in ageism. Unfortunately, I'm raised by BBTs. So I actually want to extend the invitation to anyone that can make their time or make their way to any of our hotspots. So we are providing transportation to patents. They're going to be at the nearest malls all around Gauteng and Soweto. So they just need to go onto our website. It's www.queenethindabafoundation.co.za. They should find a link there that should take their details and provide them with a ticket.
Okay, Queeneth Indaba, Queen and an E-T-H, Queeneth Indaba Foundation. That's pretty simple, right? Okay. What are the expectations for you in terms of the multiple programs that you talk about, and at the end of the programs or the culmination on Saturday, you want to see what's happening?
I really want to see young people getting exposure. I want to see young people coming in their numbers for opportunities, not only here. We've partnered with Russia. We've partnered with the USA. So we want to give... I'm tired of hearing no jobs for young people. There's nothing like that. And the SASA 50, can that story that are willing to change their lives and creating opportunities. We understand to get to such
All right, I think we're losing you, and it's just a bad connectivity. We're going to have to just wrap that up, unfortunately. But it's okay. I think the important one, and thanks to my guest, Olafemi Katani, but the important one is the Queeneth Indaba Foundation. In fact, what I'll do is I'll get our digital team to actually tweet it out as well, so you can follow that. But certainly go to the website, Queeneth Indaba Foundation. Right, let me just see. I'll tell you what, if we... there's been a lot of voice notes, but maybe, you know what, as we wrap up here, here's another. In fact, there's a comment. Zimbabwe has to fix the political situation and everything will fall into place. ZANU-PF government is in denial of its failures. They play a blame game. Do you agree with that it has to fix up its political situation? What comes first? Economy, politics. You know, we spoke to Tessa Doom, and that is put up as a podcast about the importance of the state and the importance of the economy and the link between the two, how the one certainly impacts on the other one, right? Let me just tell you as we wrap up a couple of things that you may want to just give your own thoughts on, right? This show, and we certainly welcome feedback from you in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I welcome it, and probably the best way is to WhatsApp us even now, because we'll pick up even the WhatsApps later on in text form or in voice note form. That's the one. But otherwise, even on our social media platforms, you can follow SFM Radio on the X platform or Twitter, as well as on Facebook, as well as on Instagram, and you can certainly follow me on all those platforms too. But importantly, using that hashtag, The National Pulse, and then give us your comments about what for you about the show that you're really enjoying, not just today, but every day, right? And maybe one or two things that you'd like to listen to in terms of content, a lot more than we're covering right now, because your feedback does matter. So we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for staying with us. The National Pulse. What's your pulse rate like now? You tell me. Let's end up now. We're going to get the news with Eva Chipa. It's 6 o'clock.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories at 6. Concourt offers some direction on the IEC's electoral court challenge, and government struggles to meet targets to settle land claims. Good evening, I'm Eva Chipa. In news just in, the Constitutional Court has issued directions in the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order that paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party candidate list ahead of the May 2024 polls. The Apex Court today directed respondents that are opposing the application to file answering affidavits on or before Thursday, the 25th of April, adding that further directions may be issued. Kanima Panga reports.
The Electoral Court recently granted former President Zuma's appeal and further set aside the IEC's March decision to uphold an objection against the former president's candidature in terms of Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution. The Specialist Court, however, is yet to provide reasons. The IEC, which is standing by its March decision, is asking the Apex Court for an urgent hearing, contending that it is in the public interest and the interest of justice for there to be finality and clarity on Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Bladen Zimande, says he is pleased that the Sector Education and Training Authority have built strong relationships with TVET colleges to try and combat the challenge of unemployment in the country. He was speaking during the SETA Skills Summit in Boksburg on Gauteng's East Rand. The minister says SETA's plays an important role in the transition from tertiary institutions to the workplace.
One of the